like to call this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Arlington Heights Village Board to order on what's today? Wednesday, May 29, 2019, and ask if you would please rise and join the Village Board in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Since our clerk is here, Becky, if you call a roll.
Trustee Padovani?
Here.
Trustee LaBedz?
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Here.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Here.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Here.
Trustee Scaletta?
Here.
Trustee Canty?
Here.
Trustee Baldino?
Here.
President Hayes?
Here. We've got 4 departmental status reports tonight and some other business. And so, Mr. Reckloff, any introductory comments?
No, tonight we're going to be starting with the Integrated Services Department.
Right. Diana? Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Diana Makula, the Assistant Village Manager, and I'm here to present the annual report for the Integrated Services Department, and I'm excited to showcase what we do. I feel fortunate to work with a great group of employees, 3 of which are here tonight. We have Nancy Clues, our Communications Coordinator. We have Robert Taraska, our IT Manager, and then we also have Sarah Fitzgibbons, our Management Analyst. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to them for their assistance with preparing the report. So the Integrated Services Departments, or ISD, is an 11-member work group that includes the Village Manager's Office and Information Technology, GIS. The Manager's Office has 6 employees, including the Village Manager, who is the administrative head of the village government and oversees daily operations of the village. The Manager's Office includes 3 work units that coordinate a variety of services that provide both support and outreach to village staff and the community. The ISD focus on 3 important service areas where interdepartmental coordination is key, and those are technology initiatives, communication enhancements, and customer service initiatives. And this slide just gives you an overview of what each person kind of does within the department. These are the primary services that we provide, as well as some of the functions that we provide for the community. Okay, some workload and performance data that we have. I'd like to highlight our liquor license function. It takes a lot of time to process someone and get them to a point of a liquor license interview. So in many cases, we are the first encounter that they will have with the village, and we want them to have to open their business on a good note. So in 2018, we had 114 establishments that held a liquor license. We also do a lot with conference rooms used by outside groups. This can be very busy for staff, but very appreciated by outside groups that use the meeting room space in Village Hall. We booked 330 rooms that were used by outside groups. And we also manage the civic event sign on Northwest Highway and Arlington Heights Road. And we created 162 unique posts in 2018. Some of the workload and performance data that you have before you is the community is very interested in communicating with the village, and they want to be informed. So we work hard to provide timely and relevant information, and I'll point to a couple of great stats. This slide shows the top 3 website months in 2018. November had the most website visits at 35,465 visits. Information posted that month included the winter storm, the garbage collection delayed, and our ad on the annual tree lighting ceremony. And the article that received the most views was the article from November 26, 2018. You may recall this event. We had 13,000 people without power in town. We had heavy wet snow of 9 inches, and the village agreed to a special branch pickup for the residents. This slide shows the stats on our digital communication. So our open rates for emails sent and for the e-newsletter are above the industry standards at 56%. The industry standard is actually 22.9. So our open rates are trending upwards as the January e-alert on freezing rain received the best open rate of 60%. So we continue to concentrate on our sign-up efforts and will do so throughout the year. And the Village Connection, this is our e-newsletter that we started in January of last year, that had 3,000, so far we have 3,638 subscribers. So Facebook is our most active social media platform in regards to reach and engagement. We have 12,644 Facebook likes, and the top Facebook posts were the November storm, followed by downtown parking study and the Sounds of Summer schedule. Our Nextdoor platform is actually something that we're also embracing and continues to grow. So workload and performance data, IT has a tremendous amount of equipment and infrastructure that it supports. We support 426 employees. Some of our inventory includes 479 desktops and laptops. We support 51 public safety mobile data terminals. And the fire department has a tablet in vehicles that is used to collect patient care information. In 2018, there were 2,840 help desk requests. That's a tremendous amount and reflects a 10% increase in support calls over the prior year. And the month of May generated the highest number of support calls at a total of 328 help desk requests. So with the growing hardware and increasing use of software, we have to make sure that we can service all the existing and upcoming assets. So the uptick that we saw was in part due to the new police station, including 18 new workstations, in addition to the setup of camera surveillance system, along with a viewing location at the front desk, and we also saw an increase of tablets by departments utilizing them in the field. So we have many accomplished that we are proud of in the village manager's office. I'd like to highlight some of them. We introduced the One Village Voice customer service initiative by working with a staff committee to explore ways to define our customer service standards and enhance our customer service standards and engage with the public. That will incorporate the One Village Voice motto, which is communicating in a clear, consistent, and courteous manner. We created 4 new liquor license classifications: brewery, spa, hotel package sales, and hotel in-room mini bars. We modified 1 liquor classification as well. We did automate our renewal liquor license process, and 41 establishments submitted those out of 114. We also signed the agreement to implement the commuter mobile pay, and that will take place in the summer of this year. And these are some additional accomplishments that we also had throughout the year. One of the things that I would like to highlight on here is that we did add a website alert. This is a cover banner that covers the website. And the notice that we put on there, the alert that we put on there was when group canceled some of their service, like the morning of. And so we were able to do this alert notice and notify the public. We also have additional accomplishments, including the Walk Arlington program, the interactive story map. We implemented a construction 411 page that was added to the website. This provides progress updates to the village's road programs during the summer months. We implemented our e-newsletter, and that's posted on the website and social media platforms as well. So key accomplishments, ISD is a liaison department for many of the village events, and Holiday Happenings is the newer event. The first one was in 2016, and that was driven by a village board goal to have more activities in the downtown. This event idea came from an interdepartmental staff group of 10 people, and it's been very successful. The Sounds of Summer is also something that's coordinated through ISD. We raise sponsorship money, we coordinate communication with the bands, and we market the program as well. And we have 12 concerts this year. IT accomplishments. We have had many accomplishments from the IT division. They provided technology leadership for a true smooth transition to the new police station. They migrated email accounts to a Microsoft Office 365 government cloud environment. That was very important. And they implemented a mobile data management system for the centralized iPad management. GIS is an important function that we also offered the community. We had a comprehensive onboarding plan that took place throughout the year to highlight each department in this new GIS format, and there's a lot of collaboration that takes place. You'll see on this slide, we created 19 additional individual maps that the community can take a look at. It includes 2019 construction projects, downtown parking map, bicycle routes, and street maintenance. We have some of the current challenges that we're looking at is really evaluating our IT staffing and needs. In looking at departmental challenges, we did an evaluation, and over the past year, IT staffing levels were analyzed to determine optimization of staffing resources and to see where there were voids in staffing. The report determined that the IT model is not designed to move the organization ahead to effectively automate and optimize business processes. The current model is more of a maintenance type of staffing configuration to maintain and upgrade systems, but not staffed to properly vet new initiatives and technology improvements. And the limitations in IT staffing is hindering the organization's ability to take on new technology improvements. The staffing report showed that Arlington Heights has the highest IT staff to full-time employee ratio as compared to IT staff in 3 comparable communities. So Arlington Heights has 1 IT staff member per 85 village employees, where others have ratios of 1 to 31 or 1 to 50. So as we move forward, we know that this is something that we must address. Some other challenges that we're navigating include the limitations of the ERP. The current ERP cannot properly respond to internal residential and business needs for billing, procurement, permits, and licensing. And we're also looking at providing timely responses on social media. The public's expectation is that we will communicate quickly with them when they ask us questions or post a comment. And then social media is always trending for us. We need to keep pace with the trends, increase our website and social media presence, and find new ways to promote ourselves and our services. So this slide will show that we have a lot of initiatives that we're exploring, and I'm only going to highlight a few of them. The biggest one here that I wanted to highlight was the Everbridge emergency notification system. And this is a system in collaboration with Northwest Central Dispatch. We're going to be introducing an emergency notification system to the community. This system will be used to communicate with residents via phone, via text, or email. Residents can sign up to receive emergency and non-emergency communications. An emergency alert includes something that's imminent, such as threats to safety and health. And you can also choose to receive non-emergency community notification system information as well, including information on special events if you so choose. So this is an opt-in program, and a marketing campaign will be launched at the end of summer. We're also going to be highlighting our customer service initiatives. I mentioned those before, and we're going to reinstitute a village staff committee that's going to look at that. We're also going to include looking at Facebook Live videos, Instagrams, and increasing subscribers to our campaigns for newsletter, e-alerts. So ISD is actually going to assist and also lead at various stages of the ERP. It's a software that standardizes, streamlines, and integrates business processes across many business activities. So the benefits are tremendous, and that's really what's holding us back from moving forward with a lot of initiatives that departments want to do. So we're also going to be looking at a document management system. The goal is to automate and reduce paper and create digital files. So this software creates a digital workflow, it archives documents, and it also allows for enhanced search functions. And then a big initiative also for IT is in partnership with Northwest Central Dispatch. They are going to be updating local infrastructure as part of an improvement to the new CAD plan. So this will be include reconfiguring all fire and police desktops, laptops, MDTs, and migrating to a new server. So it's a very intensive project, as we need to reconfigure close to 200 of those units. So some of the fun things that we like to do and like to offer is to the community is new social media informational campaigns. So we know that there are some posts that, they're news, but there's also lifestyle matter issues. So one of the things that was trending was pet owners not picking up after their dogs. And when we do post these, they do generate a lot of engagement and conversation. So this is something that we're debuting here before you. You can see there's a dog and he's trying to pick up after himself. He can't quite do it, so the line below him says, "Though I be talented, I could use my human's help." So this is something that we're going to be launching next week, and just to show that, there's important information that we need to communicate to the community, but we also need to have some fun with some other issues as well. So one of the things that we also enjoy doing is including more video communications, and those are becoming a medium of choice among internet users. So we're looking at doing more video promotions and how-to videos to enhance our communications with the public and to humanize village government. So the first one, we did two videos in 2018. One was the Walk Arlington program, and the other one was the holiday happenings using drone technology. So I'm going to show the first video first. This is the Walk Arlington informational video. They're both about an hour, I'm sorry, minute 40, minute 35, not an hour. Ooh, I apologize.
I'm gonna be a
We'll
long
have to bring in snacks, huh? Okay. Here we go. Okay, it worked earlier. You want to come take a look, Robert? Yeah, sorry, hold on one second.
To the right.
Yeah. He does this with his eyes closed, so it's pretty impressive. Oh, somebody turn the volume there.
Yeah, someone, yep.
Oh, okay. He does.
There you go.
So we hope you enjoyed that video that was created with Kevin here, Corcoran, through his productions, and really through the efforts of Nancy Clues and a couple others. We had the Bike and Pedestrian Committee involved, we had the schools involved, the Park District and Library, so it was a really fun initiative. And then this one was, we decided to use drone technology, so we did a drone flyover in December over the Holiday Happenings event, and this was the piece that was compiled for that. So we hired the drone person in December to do this for us, and this is going to serve as one of our promo pieces for this coming year in December. So we believe that we successfully captured and built enthusiasm and community spirit. We also learned how popular these kind of short videos can really be for the community, and this is something that we're going to do more often. So in concluding, some concluding thoughts and statements is that ISD will adapt its work product to the ongoing needs of departments and the public. It is a department that needs to remain fluid to operational and community needs. So ISD strives to balance the workload of ongoing projects while leading new initiatives that are needed to make the village a quality, high-performing organization that is innovative and responsive to the needs of the organization and the community. So I'll open it up to questions.
Well, thanks, Diana. Really nice job by you and your team. Really impressive presentation, and so we thank you for all the great work you do with really comparatively limited
Thank you.
people power, and so
Yes.
really producing a lot of great work, and so we thank you. My only question was regarding the IT staffing levels.
Yes.
It really is a concern from looking at these numbers. I just wonder, is there an industry standard that you used for this or that is out there in the industry in terms of this ratio?
Sure. This was a staffing report that we did internally by reaching out to various different communities and looking at what they offer there too. So it was a little bit difficult because we pulled from the website, we pulled from their budget. People account for things in different fashions as to which IT level supports what department and how it's funded. So, but we know that we believe understaffed currently. So we're kind of in this maintenance type of zone where we have so many assets. We're a big village. We have a lot of employees. And that alone, I think, is a constraint because we have so many departments wanting to do different things. And the biggest challenge for us, too, not only in maintaining in cybersecurity, which is ever more so important, is that we know that we're trying to vet these programs with the departments, and it takes a lot of time to vet programs because you're not just going to meet with one vendor. You're going to meet with multiple vendors. It's a very lengthy process. And so to, dedicate an IT person to that alone is very difficult because Robert, as the head of IT, has a lot of obligations, and then we have another person in place there. But, that's a big challenge for us. So that is one thing that I have been talking with the village manager about needing to address.
You've got the ratio at 1 to 85.
Yes.
Is there an acceptable ratio that we would try to work towards?
I think it depends on what the organization can do. We know that we would benefit from an additional person. We're saying we're understaffed currently, and we know that we're going to be introducing a brand new ERP. And so we know that there's a bunch of communities that have recently updated the ERP. They are currently posting for additional personnel just to manage that system. We had, and the person who managed our ERP, that person left the village, I think it was like about 15 years ago, or a little bit longer. So we don't have a dedicated person to the current system that we have now. That person was trained in it, and we're going to be introducing a brand new system. So, if it was something that we could do in the budget year or next budget year, we would like to introduce a new person to this department.
Okay, thank you.
If I could,
Go ahead, Randy.
I could add to that. I mean, it's something that we've been talking quite a bit about over the last several months, and what we're finding is a couple of things. As we get further along, we analyze the departments and their strengths and weaknesses, and we look at how can we build efficiencies, and we look at particularly some of our development review processes, for example. We're finding that a lot of our bottlenecks and a lot of our problems are related to technology. And we get new employees, as you guys all know, we've had a lot of turnover in staff. And one of the comments we hear from our new staff is, my gosh, you guys are still using this? And our IT department, we've got a great staff, very dedicated, very hardworking staff, but they really were set up more to maintain the existing system rather than to be kind of a force for change within the organization. And when we hear from the departments that technology is an issue, and we don't want to be in a place where the IT department or division is standing in the way of us doing positive change. We want them to be leading the charge. And I don't know that there's an industry standard in terms of what we should be doing. I just know that what we're doing right now isn't getting us where we want to go. And when we did the kind of check-in with our peer communities and peer organizations, one we're really lean. We're staffed very lean in this regard. And I think this is one of those things where if we invest in personnel in this area, it impacts every department and allows them all to improve. She didn't mention it verbally, but I mean, one of the things we just kind of, for the heck of it, looked at other peer organizations within our community. And, the Arlington Heights Memorial Library has one IT staff for every 14 employees. And so that's on the other end of the continuum. And obviously they performed a very high level in that regard, and it's very evident. And we're not able to do some of the things we do. And so it's something we're going to be continuing our conversation about. And but it is something that gets in the way of doing many of the things we want to do.
Okay, thanks. Questions? Trustee Scaletta.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that, bringing on a new program, software that, you're going to need more support, but I think that for me, that I'm going to need more than just 3 other villages listed. And I need to understand better of what what the personnel do. Are we counting you and Nancy in this number?
No, it's IT personnel only.
Okay.
The IT division, which is 5 employees.
Great. No, and that's kind of what, I'm like looking at it, trying to understand it, because I think that you're ultimately going to need more support, but I think that we need to understand from these other municipalities exactly what they have.
Sure.
And I understand for this presentation that we went off of the website, but we should probably do a survey to understand exactly what it is that these employees are doing for the municipalities.
Sure, and Trustee Scaletta, I can clarify, we not only looked at the website, but we did contact some of the IT managers of the different villages, as well as checking the numbers with their budget numbers as well. So we tried to pull together as much information as we could find, and things are just, they reflected differently. Each community does that differently. So it wasn't always apples to apples, and we tried to make sure that we can grab that as much as we can. So we highlighted the 3 communities that surround us because we felt that those were comparable, just due to the size, but also due to their IT staffing levels as well, and just showcasing right now where we're at compared to them.
Sure. I'm only.
Some of the
pointing
other
out
ones
that-
have programmers, people that code, and we don't have that.
Sure. I'm only pointing out that in the future,
Yes.
if you're looking for more staffing, more detail is going to be needed.
Sure.
So you talked a little bit about the alert posting.
Yes.
So if I pay for my water bill online and you have my email address, are you adding those people to your e-newsletter database?
No, people have to subscribe to that and let us know that they want to opt in.
Okay.
So we won't just use people's email addresses without seeing if they're interested in opting in.
We do ask them when they, as part of their coming in, if they want to subscribe to it, though.
So that is an option for them that will be noticed on that, but we won't automatically just take their email to do that.
Okay. That's a good policy. I'm just curious.
Yes. And so one of the things, Trustee Scaletta, that we did was, we did a social media kind of promo, and we're doing these encouragement when we do something for the downtown construction. That was big news, obviously, and we got 280 additional subscribers from that. Cross-promotion, that to join our e-newsletter.
Great. So what's the next step of trying to increase the e-newsletter database?
Okay, so we're looking at doing some cross-promotion whenever we market something to let people know that they can opt in. And so really, it's going to be a marketing campaign that our team's going to look at different ways to do that. So we can push it out on our website, we can push it out on various different communication pieces that we have, but also cross-promotion that we do on Twitter, on Facebook, and whatever else that we choose to do.
Okay. And then, over the years, at main events, which is a village-sponsored event, and, there's been times where we've handed out reusable bags or some other item that has the village logo on it. Can we use that as a way to encourage people to give us their email addresses?
We can.
On an iPad, give them a bag that's reusable, but at the same time, we get their email address.
Sure, if people want to sign up. Sure.
Because, I think, what did you say, it was about 4,000 people?
Yes, just shy of that, yeah.
And if we look at it that we have 30,000 residents, you know, because I think that you have to look at it that way because generally in a household, you're probably getting one email address. You can't use the 75,000 resident number. We probably need to use the household number.
Right.
You
And,
agree?
you know, we do know that we want to increase our subscriber base. One of the things too is that we have, we're working on targeted communication. So when a certain area, of certain blocks is undergoing water main replacement, street reconstruction, resurfacing, so we're working with the engineers with an email list there. And so there's an opportunity to get additional residents to sign up for this program.
So, for example, like Cypress Detention, you would use that email database, send an email to them to ask them if they want to subscribe.
We haven't done that, but we're looking at opportunities to list that option as part of the communication piece.
Okay.
So as long as it's coordinated with us, you know, our department here, that is an option that we can offer for people to sign up for alerts.
I truly respect the fact that we're not taking people's email addresses and just dropping them into a database, because people are offended by that. That's
Correct.
their personal information. So I like that, but it'd be nice if we use that information to say, hey, would you like to receive an e-newsletter from the Village of Arlington Heights, you know, providing you with information.
It's something we can explore internally, sure.
Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions. Thank you. Good presentation. And I know you guys work very hard, and I know that looking at the numbers that, you know, 5 people in the IT department for, you know, over 400 employees is got to be challenging. And so I just want to receive some more information.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And one thing I do want to would add is that, you know, we do maintain 8 separate facilities as well. So for 5 IT personnel, that can be a lot. I mean, you know, we have, you know, our bookends of the 2 fire stations, then everything in between. That's a lot of locations in addition to providing police and fire 24/7. A lot of times you'll see that they'll be in the field. So, you know, it becomes challenging to actually have people working in this building at times.
Okay, Trustee Padovani.
I'm sorry, Mayor, could I just respond to one issue that Trustee Scaletta brought up? One of the other challenges we found, if you recall, when we did that survey last year in terms of how people communicate with us, is that there are a lot of people that don't want to hear from us via an email newsletter. They want to hear from us through social media, but they don't use Facebook. They only use Instagram, and there's other people that only use Twitter. There's an increasing number of people that only use Nextdoor, and that's one of the challenges we run into is we can't put all of our communication eggs in one basket, and so we're trying to kind of simultaneously grow all of these avenues at once. But I just want to make sure that point was stressed that's a challenge. Is there's people that they tell us flat out, yeah, I get that newsletter, but I delete it every time because I don't have time to read it. And it's like, well, how can we get to you? I don't know. But that's what's one of our challenges as well.
And you also have the people that aren't on social media that still want information. So, I mean, it's definitely a challenge.
100%.
I'm just trying to understand how we increase the
Sure.
database and whether or not the group that is leading this is looking at all the avenues of when we have people in town that might be in a good mood and want a free bag or a free koozie or whatever it is. Sure.
Okay, Trustee Padovani.
Thank you, Mayor. Diane, a wonderful presentation. Thank you
Thank you.
for your whole department and what you guys do. Much appreciated. The technology does seem to be the choke point, and it sounds like we can't get that ERP system in here fast enough because it's going to facilitate the productivity and the efficiency of the entire village.
Correct.
And until that day, we're in, like you say, maintenance mode. I did want to ask you, what if you could expand a little bit more on cybersecurity with all the threats and all the breaches you hear about all day long. What are we doing to keep the village secure?
Sure. Let me just go to that section real quick. So we know that we need to keep our systems updated to reduce the security risks. So we have multiple layers of security, cybersecurity in place. And so if there's a threat or something happens, it would not affect our whole system. So this requires a lot of effort by IT to continuously monitor, because something could be released in the morning, and it's all hands on deck to address that situation that occurred, and that happened to us a few weeks ago. So we are always on alert. We're always looking at patches that need to take place, but they're very time consuming as well. So that, I mentioned it a few times, that is one of our challenges, is making sure we stay, in tune with the better practices for cybersecurity.
Okay, so you're talking software and hardware
Yes.
as part of your layers,
Yep.
if you will, and policies and procedures for everybody?
Yeah, and that is something that we're going to be actually rolling out here, is the software vetting and procurement. So a lot of times, sometimes a department goes out, they buy a piece of software, they think it's standalone. Nothing's standalone anymore. It has to connect to the village systems. And so we have to make sure that we ensure that they know that there has to be security in place, so to minimize, an opportunity for penetration into our systems. I mean, you let them in, one way, and people can kind of navigate through if they're very crafty in doing so.
All right, and by policies and procedures, I mean the human element, so that are people required to change their password?
Oh, yes, of course, yes, we are.
Whatever the
It's
requirement
180 days? Yes. Yeah, every 180 days.
There you go.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, well, that's fine. And
And we have, multiple authenticity as well, so you'll have to do your your email, and then you have to do sometimes a passcode depending on what you're connecting to.
okay, all right, thank you.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. It was a great report, and thank you to all of your staff, those here and not here, for everything that you do, because you sure do a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of different questions I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned this performance benchmarking cooperative. Could you expand upon what that is? I just was curious.
Sure. And actually, I'll turn it over to Randy, because he's actually the person that is on that commission.
Thanks. What it is there's a group of I think we've got about 18 communities in it now, and we are working with University of Illinois Chicago, and we study different subject areas. Last year we studied police. This year we're studying fire, and the project is still in its infancy. And we kind of we kick off the process by talking about what are some of the biggest challenges that our practitioners are experiencing. So, for example, one of the topics is on-duty injuries in the fire department is one of the ones we identified. And so now what that group is doing using UIC and our own staff is we're looking at what are all of our experiences, what data do we have, who's doing well, who isn't, are we comparable, and then also what are the best practices that we have that we can identify and so we can all kind of emulate each other. And so sometimes for some of the things, like last year, we focused quite a bit on mental health, dealing with mentally ill residents at the police department. That one didn't lend itself to a lot of quantitative analysis, and that it was more qualitative. This year, the fire measures that have been identified were a little bit more quantitative, and so it's been a good internal process to kind of help us look at what can we do better.
Okay, so the whole idea then is eventually to have new processes or procedures that will work. That sounds like a great idea. Thanks. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the study of the interviews with the boards and commissions chairs, and if there would be some kind of report to us or something like that coming at some point.
I'm going to take that one
Sure.
as well. I'm planning on having a report out to the board probably this summer or this fall. That's kind of wrapping itself up. We've got 15 boards and commissions and about 150 commissioners, and so we did surveys of everyone. Now we're meeting, and there were some common threads that we identified. There are some commission-specific issues as well, and we've got a handful of recommendations that I think we're going to be sorting through, and so we're working on how to convey that to the village board, but that's going to be coming up over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Trustee Canty.
So not to beat a dead horse on the IT staffing, but when I hear you say that you're going to take the lead on this ERP implementation and you only have 5 people, are you going to be able to have them come away from their roles to actually help with the implementation? Because working in IT implementations, it's critical that you
Yes.
have
So
that.
I appreciate the that comment. What we're going to be doing is actually issuing an RFP to hire a consultant to help us through this process. So it is not something that we could take on ourselves.
Okay.
And we wouldn't put ourselves in a position, I think, to fail, because this is a huge undertaking. It has to be successful. It's going to be a very lengthy process, multi-year process. And so we are going to be issuing an RFP to hire a consultant, and that hopefully will be going out in a few weeks. And so at that point, once we work with the consultant and see what we need to do, then we're going to figure out strategically where we can place our IT staff.
Okay.
And
So kind
myself
of
as well.
some capacity planning there
Yes,
to figure out.
very much so.
Okay. So thank you. That makes me a little bit nervous when I see that. And then my other question is very much switching gears on you. The Downtown Events Committee.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of talk about that, but we're also working to build out some of the other areas, the kind of gateways into the village. Would we look to expand this committee to include events there, or do we want to stay focused on the downtown as kind of an entertainment district and do other things with these kind of gateway areas? like
Sure. So
Southern
the
Corridor?
downtown committee was formed from a village board goal 2 years ago, and that was to introduce more people into the downtown and highlight it as a destination point. So with that, we created the staff committee, and the one item we were able to do and we received funding for was the holiday happenings, which is the first Friday in December. So if it is a desire of a board to extend that, we'd have to talk about that and look at budgeting and what we would want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Diana. So I, as well as the others, am concerned about the ERP effect because even though I think you're going to hire a consultant to do this, I think there's going to be a lot of time, obviously involved by Robert and his staff as far as that goes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to take away from, your current needs as far as that goes. And I can only imagine what the implementation is going to be as far as to put this program in. Have we considered in the past utilizing people within each department to try to be a go-to person for the IT area as far as that goes, as, to help the IT department assist? There's issues that come up, or?
We have. So I think what we see is that just naturally there's some power users within each department, and, if they have some tech savvy, they're able to help out the department to improve some efficiencies. But we're at a bottleneck. I mean, our system is not an efficient system. So there's new programs or new initiatives that they want to vet, and they just can't do it because our system can't handle that, or it's very expensive to do an upgrade to the current system, and it doesn't make sense. So we try to use in-house personnel where we can. There is a management analyst group that Sarah's a part of that includes somebody from Public Works as well as the police department. They're also looking at being able to move forward different IT initiatives, and they're going to be, I think, a valuable resource to us when we embark on this process with the ERP.
If I could expound on that as well, I think there's no question with this particular project, we're going to have staff from every department heavily involved. There's no way that Robert and his team or a consultant would be able to anticipate all of the needs of the building department, the police department, the fire department, finance, et cetera. They are going to have to be kind of taking the lead on each individual component in order for this to work. And so this is going to be something that absolutely can't fall solely on IT or finance. This is going to have to be an organization-wide effort as we go.
And just to add to what Manager Recklau said is that we have to be able to discover what each department is looking for. So they have their own efficiencies. They operate their department. I necessarily don't know all of how they operate, nor will Robert. So for us to understand, how the billing department needs to flow better with its permitting process, that's critical. People have been wanting to pay online for so long. And so we're looking to offer those efficiencies, but those departments are going to have to be represented on a ERP staff committee when we embark on this process.
And don't forget, you have the 9 of us as other users in the system too, so.
We will
so
remember
the
that.
total's 435.75 people
true.
as far as that goes, so. Not that we're probably maybe least demanding, maybe, or so. But, so I had a question about the password and things like that. Is 180 days really a short enough time that we shouldn't be doing it, or too long of a time that we should be changing passwords sooner?
Sure, Robert can answer that. That is a very good practice that we have in place, because Robert and I have talked about that. We tried to shorten it, and people were not happy. And then our IT help desks increased because people couldn't remember their passwords, and we had to continuously reset it. So that is something that just naturally occurs when people are kind of forced to change something every 45 days.
And that is an industry standard, so across the board, it's between 120 to 180 days, typically for a password reset. But the ultimate solution is two-factor authentication. Passwords are going away, or passwords are non-secure, so two-factor is the next technology that's going to be implemented on all of the systems.
Yeah, so that's an additional layer that we've talked about exploring, and what that looks like, for example, would be, you would not only would add in your password, you would also, get a code or something sent to your phone.
Right, the two-step authentication, right. So that's not being, how far away would we be away from doing something like that? Would that be something that would be done before the ERP, or?
So that depends on, that's a system by system specific. Some systems support it, some don't. So as technology improves, the new ERP system most likely will have that as a standard. So it's just, some systems are outdated and just can't support it.
So the current one we have really doesn't
That one for sure.
allow for that?
That one, yes. That one does not support it by any means, so.
Okay. No, thank you for your time.
Okay, Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Diana, for your presentation and everything that the ISD staff does for the village. I had some questions about staffing, but they've been asked and answered, so I'm going to stay away from that. We've been hearing a lot about the ERP system that we're beginning to take a look at. And if it's too soon to answer this question, feel free to tell me that. But I'm wondering, we've been hearing about the needs of all the different departments and how many different components are going to go into this ERP system. So my question is, are we anticipating a phased implementation of the ERP, or are we just going to have it go live as one big system all at once?
So I'll answer it in two ways. So what I know right now, based upon some of the research that I've conducted, is oftentimes you run the hybrid system. So this happened with Woodridge as well as Naperville. So you're running your old system while the new one is obviously being implemented, and there's a transition phase for that. So, there's some that go kind of cold turkey and say effective this date, this is the switch. For us, I want to do things properly, and so if that means doing things all at once, and it's a system that can support many different initiatives, I say we go for it if we can manage it. And people have been waiting for solutions for such a long time. I think that if we can do it, I'd like to do that.
Well, that's kind of where my question is coming from, because it sounds like there's some components that are going to have a huge
Yes.
impact on efficiency and the ability for residents to do online applications and payments.
Yes.
And I certainly understand the testing phase, the hybrid phase, where you're making sure that things are working the way you expect they are. I wouldn't want to hold up those big impact components to do a big implementation of the entire package all at once if that isn't warranted. I guess that's where my question's coming
Sure,
from.
and I think that we're going to evaluate that. So once we
Sure,
meet with the
sure.
consultant, they take a deep dive into our current system, I think we'll get some answers.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else for ISD? Seeing anything from the audience for the Integrated Services Department? Seeing none? Thanks, Diana and team. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Next, we move on to legal. Robin?
Thanks. You're very welcome. I set you up so you're good to go. Go here. You want to use this?
Yeah, I'm gonna use
Or this?
that.
Okay,
Your
you're good to
method as
go.
well. You good? Good evening. So the legal department is a little department. We have 4 employees. 3 of them are part-time, 1 full-time. That's me. I have a staff attorney who works part-time, and then I have a paralegal, and then I have an administrative assistant. We sort of divide our services, divide out into 3 different ways. The first thing we do is what I define as administrative in nature. That includes all the research we do. That includes all the advising and answering questions from the board, from boards and commission members, from village employees, from residents, all fall under that thing. We do a significant amount of contract drafting and review. We look at essentially every contract that the village enters into. Some are pretty simple and routine. We do those pretty quickly. Some are a lot more complicated, contracts for building the police station, those sorts of things. We've also created a simple contract form for the more routine things we do on a regular basis. My staff attorney, Lisa Farrington, spends an extraordinary amount of time under FOIA compliance. As you'll see later, we get a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests. They all get answered. Not only do they all have to be answered and responded to, distributed to appropriate departments, they all have to be kept track of. We're required by law to keep them. So we keep the FOIAs, we keep a database on the FOIAs. We are required to keep foreclosure notices. So we have to keep all of that stuff and keep databases on all of that stuff as well. It's a lot of data for just to have. The final administrative thing we do is collective bargaining. I'm the lead bargainer on the collective bargaining team. We have 2 bargaining units, police and fire. We will be bargaining this fall. We're pretty fortunate. We have great relationships. Our bargaining generally goes really, really smoothly. Still takes time to pull it all together. On the legislative function, it involves keeping everybody up to date on changes to state and federal laws. We draft all of our ordinances and resolutions, and we obviously keep track of the village code, including code amendments, updating the code, correcting the code, making sure everybody who wants a hard copy of the code gets their code updates. In terms of litigation, while we don't do any litigation in-house, I manage and oversee the outside counsel that does handle that. I'm pleased to report we currently only have 4 pending lawsuits, which is really low for a municipality of our size. You can knock again. It's okay. I also manage all of the subpoenas, particularly our police and firefighters are frequently subpoenaed for civil lawsuits that we are not a party to. We review every subpoena. We review every report that goes with every subpoena. I talk to the officer or firefighter a couple minutes to make sure that they're comfortable. We usually require their depositions to be done in the legal department so they have a feeling of comfort and they don't have to go very far to do that. Last year, we started administrative adjudication code enforcement. I oversaw that process. It's been going pretty well. Our goal is to bring people into compliance for things that they're not. And we've had a fair amount of success. It's worked pretty well. We've gotten activity on some long-standing problems where there's probably been some movement, and that's been helpful. And I think the code enforcement process has allowed us to do that. The other departments have all actually embraced it and do a pretty good job in, seeking out, handling the right cases to send that route. So it's worked pretty well. We haven't had any yet this year, but we also handle the liquor hearings for the mayor and, if needed, the electoral board. Haven't needed that in a couple of years as well. So this workload and performance data, just a few little odds and ends. FOIA requests, you can tell which way they're trending. They just don't ever seem to go down. And it's a lot of people just asking for everything from police reports to environmental reports, reports on property. They just keep asking for information. The ordinances and resolutions prepared and adopted, it varies from year to year depending entirely on what's going on. So those numbers are up, you can tell, are up and down. Code amendments, again, those are ordinances that approved code amendments. Again, varies from year to year depending. So for instance, last year we did some significant code amendments, but did it all in, 1 ordinance or 2 ordinances. So key accomplishments. So as I talked about, the administrative adjudication process for code enforcement. We worked with the engineering department to resolve a very long-standing drainage issue at Arlington Market. It had been going on for years. Finally got that resolved last fall. We updated our agreement with performing arts at Metropolis. We adopted an agreement with the GIS Consortium, significant changes to the zoning code, changes to the liquor code. We sold a couple pieces of property, and we finalized the agreement for the sale of the former teen center. Things for us, these are sort of ongoing challenges that we face pretty much daily. It's the village code, keeping it current, keeping it up to date, fixing things that seem to be broken. FOIA, as I've already mentioned. The Metropolis Commercial Condominium Building, I serve as the president of the Condominium Association. So that they're looking at putting in a new marquee sign and just helping manage the building in terms of keeping everybody happy. It's a challenge, but we do it. And employee relations, just both in the collective bargaining and just in terms of as things arise. I work closely with the Human Resources Department on those kinds of things. So key initiatives underway, working with Building and Life Safety on modifications to the building code. We are working with HR to update the employee handbook. I'm working with a small group of representatives from the Chamber of Commerce and the Special Events Commission to talk about some joint sponsorship for the main event and taste. We're closing out the contract of the police building, and depending on what happens with the legalization of cannabis, if it does get legalized, there will be a whole slew of issues that we'll have to sort our ways through. So we're looking at some of those things. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Robin. Nice report. Just one question on the representation of our village employees in depositions that are not village related. Do you sit on those? Or?
Nobody sits in. I look at all of it in the first place. I look at the reports to make sure that there isn't a risk that we could somehow be dragged in. And that's actually why this happened, because many, many, many years ago, that is what happened. We got dragged into a lawsuit. So I review the reports, and I talk to the officer or the firefighter, and then I prep them a little bit. If they were uncomfortable, and none of them have been, we would sit in with them, but they are not. So I just make sure that there isn't a potential risk for the village being dragged in, and that's the purpose of my review.
Great, thanks. All right, questions for the legal department. Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Robin, on that, just a question on the legalization of marijuana. I was reading there was one suburb that just either opted out of it or made it illegal. Is that correct?
Yes.
So as a suburb or a village, do we have that option?
As the legislation is prepped right now, they will give us the ability to opt out. The original version, if you opted out, then you didn't get any of the tax dollars that were affiliated with it. I think the current version has tweaked that a little bit, but it will depend on how the legislation works.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Robin, for your report. One quick thing. It caught my eye in the report that we're working on a possible lease for small cell equipment. Is that what? No?
We are. We had put out a request for anybody interested in leasing space on our water tower at the fire station, at Station 3 on the south end of town. We have been working with somebody. The ball is back in their court, so it's gone back and forth a little bit.
Okay. Is that something that we think we might see more of, or is this a one-time thing?
You know, there was not a lot of interest when we put it out there. Whether that's just because they're doing more polls and less equipment on things like water towers, may be the case. There's challenges with water towers. They can do it, but there's challenges. So we're not sure. We did not. This was interest that came in after we had sent out the request. So it's still out there. We're still waiting to hear from them. There's been some back and forth, but so I don't know.
It doesn't sound like it's going to be some.
Yeah, I don't think it's not. I don't think it's going to be any sort of major moneymaker.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor. Robin, you brought up the cannabis question, and I'm really glad you did, because it's amazing how many people are interested in what's going to happen. You know, I know if you talk to the police officers, they have concerns. You talk to the school boards, they have concerns, and all of the residents, and certainly anyone else, there's different perspectives on it, and how do we manage it, right?
Right.
So what's your opinion on how, let me back up. As I understand it, there'll be 3 at least different facets to it. The production of it, the preparation of it, and then the sale of it. It's probably more, but I think those are the 3 that I've heard the most talk about. Will we, as a community, as we were just talking about with Trustee Schwingbeck, if we were to opt out or stay in, whatever the case may be on that, will we have control, do you think, over those 3 different components as to like the zoning,
Yes.
for example?
So, okay, easy one, zoning control for sure.
Okay.
It's an absolute guarantee that we will have zoning control.
So where it can be produced,
Correct. Where it can be produced, where it can be sold, all those sorts of things. So
Okay.
we'll have zoning control, as we do now with medical marijuana. As you all know, we have a medical marijuana dispensary. So on the other issues, the way the legislators who are pushing this legislation are pushing it is they're sort of using as a model here the model that's in place for medical marijuana and the controls that are in place for the preparation, for the packaging, for the sale, for those sorts of things. They're also talking to the folks from the other 9 states who have done it, the ones where it's not working as well, the ones where it gets a little bit better. The story they tell is that each time a new state comes on board, it all gets tweaked a little bit better. So if we opt out, if they allow us to opt out and we opt out, there's a possibility that we just don't see any of the tax revenue that comes in. If we stay in, we can absolutely have zoning control. I don't think, as it stands right now, I don't know that that's, as it stands right now, there's no other additional kind of licensing control, like liquor licensing control, that's in place.
Well, you read my mind, because that's
I know.
where I was going to go,
I knew that,
of
figured that's where
course.
you're going. So right now, they're not inclined to allow that. The legislators who are moving this forward are not inclined to allow the local communities to do that. They will tell you that that is because they believe they have in place, by feeding off of the medical marijuana pieces, the controls in place. And so they think that it's best controlled that way rather than doing it on a local level. What it will look like when it's done, I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just going to add a couple of things. One important point to make when you talk about opting out, they're talking about opting out of allowing the sale of recreational marijuana in Arlington Heights. Individual municipalities would not have the ability, in any of the versions I've read, to say that it would be illegal to use recreational marijuana within our borders.
Correct.
And the other component of this is it would be legal for residents, I don't remember the exact number, to grow in their home X number of plants. And that also, is it 5 plants?
I think it's 5 right now.
And that's another component that we would, as a village, not be able to regulate. So it's an issue that Robin and Chief Morning and I have been trying to go to a lot of sessions on, and it's very much a moving target. The other component, the other important thing to note with them using medical marijuana as a basis is there are 60 dispensaries in the state of Illinois right now. You can imagine if recreational marijuana caught on, there would be far more than 60. And so whether or not that model of managing 60 medical dispensaries at a state level is going to translate well to thousands potentially, or hundreds, that's yet to be seen. So there's a lot of concerns. This is something that Northwest Municipal Conference and IML and a lot of our agencies are following very closely because of it's new ground.
I can only imagine, past performance. It's not going to be handled well when it's hundreds and thousands, right? There's just not enough horsepower in Springfield to handle all that, and it's going to get put into our hands. Which personally, that's in my opinion, my uneducated opinion on it right now is, I would much rather be in charge of that than let someone else be in charge of that who's not living here and not, part of the crew. So, boy, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? What's the timing that you believe that this might actually become?
Well, they are aiming for legislation that's passed and implemented as of January 1st, 2020. That's their goal.
Wow.
Partly, I think, because the governor is anticipating relying on those dollars, the tax dollars. So, and it's difficult to narrow down addressing concerns until they come closer to a final product in terms of a bill. And so that's we've seen proposed legislation that's out there, but there's nothing that's been finalized right now. To date, they have not at all been receptive to local licensing, like the liquor licensing, and Randy can tell you that's something that he's been pushing a lot. They have not been receptive to doing that. I'd be stunned if they changed, but anything's possible.
Yeah, one of the arguments is, and I was at a couple of sessions and spoke with some of the state reps, is that we have a model in place with alcohol that's been perfected over the last roughly 100 years, or 80 years or so since Prohibition ended, where it's regulated on the local level. And I think there's a strong argument that you could have a parallel system with each local liquor commission, also taking on, some element of the regulation of cannabis as well. But the state has not seen that. They really want to stick with the state-driven model. It'll be interesting to follow.
I can't understand that thinking at all. That makes no sense to me. Your perspective to me is right on. Wow. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. I wasn't going to ask this, but the discussion about legalizing marijuana prompted me to think, when you mentioned that we could control zoning, what would that mean? The zoning of where it's sold and that sort of thing? Because if you can grow 5 plants in your house, and your house can be in any residential zoning area, then
right.
How do you control zoning that?
You don't. You would zone retail sales.
Okay.
You zone commercial dispensaries. If the planting is different from the packaging, you can control all that through zoning. The thing you can't touch is the houses. Essentially, as the legislation stands, everybody, I do think it's 5 plants, can grow 5 plants. And there's no ability to control or regulate that at all.
Okay, all right. Okay, we'll see what happens. The question I did want to ask you has to do with FOIAs, actually.
Favorite subject.
And I'm just curious, do sometimes we're fairly transparent. And so do some of the requests that you get actually for information that would be readily available on the website and so on, or do you have to go through a whole FOIA process? If they send it in, the request on the form, do you have to respond that way?
Pursuant to state law, if the information that they've requested is readily available off the village's website, we can just direct them to the village's website. We don't have to, we have to look at every single FOIA that comes in, but we don't have to answer those. If we can just, so if somebody, for instance, wanted to look at the legal department's budget, we would send them to the budget document on the website. And we have a lot of information on there. We get a lot of odd requests, though. So, but yeah, if the information is available on the village's website under the law, we can just direct them to where they can find the information.
Do you have any feel for how much how many of the requests are those sort of things compared to the things that Lisa has?
Not very many.
Oh, sorry.
No, you know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a lot of them at all.
Okay.
And nobody has to fill out a form, per se. Somebody can
That's true.
shoot an email and just ask for information. We can get a phone call where we'll direct people to the website. There's obviously a form on the website that people use all the time, but
Right.
anybody asking for information is essentially requesting, it falls under FOIA, so we treat it that way, but if we can send people to a website or something, we absolutely do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Trustee Rosenberg.
So just an FYI, the Senate tonight approved the recreational marijuana use
Cool.
bill. So now it goes to the House.
Now it goes to the House.
So and it does say 5 plants. So.
Yeah, 5 is what they've been talking about. There was a little bit of discussion about potentially bringing it down to 3, but because obviously policing, that is an impossible task.
Right.
Anything further for the legal department?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Seeing none, anything from the audience? Seeing none, thanks, Robin. Planning department, Charles?
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about my department's annual report. One quote I like is from author H. Stanley Judd. He said, "A good plan is like a roadmap. It shows the final destination and usually the best way to get there." I like to think a lot of what we do in our department is develop good roadmaps for the village, our comprehensive plan, our downtown master plan, the various corridor plans and redevelopment studies. That's a big, large part of what we do in the department. The other part is regulatory, with the zoning regulations and our liaison to various boards and trustees. And then we have various specialty areas with design review, our housing programs, and business and economic development. So our mission is to provide courteous professional service to the community. We have a lot of expertise in the department. We try to balance the needs of the residents and the constituents with also the rights to be able to develop a good project and a good development in the community and to encourage positive growth. Talking about the scope of services that are outlined in the report, the staffing and workload, you probably heard from several departments. We're a very busy department. We did see a 17% reduction during the recession. We're trying to do more with less and always being asked to do things faster. So it's a constant, balance and challenge to maintain that. The 10 staff in the department, we have a combined experience of 200 years, so we have good professional experience, and that helps us manage many of these projects. In the report, you'll see there's some basically performance measures. These are a good snapshot. I don't really like to focus on these too much. So, for example, we conducted 1,500 reviews, zoning reviews last year, but one review could be a review of a shed permit, or it could be Arlington Downs or Arlington 425. There's just a massive difference between those two, but on the number of reviews, they'll show up as two. But it's a snapshot and gives you an idea of some of the scope that we do in the department. We are liaison to 6 different commissions, and that does take a significant amount of time and resources. And they're all volunteer groups, as you know, and perform good services for the community. Some of the key accomplishments over the past year, from a development point of view, Arlington Downs went through another amendment to amend their plan unit development that was first approved in 2012. We continue a dialogue with the development team on encourage them to move forward with that next phase. It's a challenge with financing and their ownership structure, but we're hopeful that their next phase, particularly on the residential part, will start to move forward soon, and they are in for permits for that. The 4 North Hickory development, 76-unit apartment building with a small amount of commercial, was approved in the Hickory Kensington area last year, and that's part of one of our TIF districts. And then, of course, we spent quite a bit of time on the Shea Hotel on Algonquin Road, trying to find the right balance of number of rooms and banquet facility and space to meet the parking supply that was on the site. Downtown, as the board's aware, we've a significant amount of resources were devoted over the last 9 months to Arlington 425. That will provide a significant, substantial economic impact to downtown and the community as a whole once it is complete. We've also continued to work with small businesses such as Hey Nani and their music venue that opened last year in the downtown. There's also a series of plans and studies that are developed. Some are confidential reports that are provided to the board throughout the year. Others are things like our annual business report. And then more recently last year, the board accepted the downtown parking usage study and the South Arlington Heights Road corridor plan, which I'll discuss a little bit further. There are other items that we do dealing with our processes that are perhaps less visible but equally as important. Over the last couple of years, we've gone through several rounds of zoning reviews of Phase 1 and of Phase 2. And even after that, we came back and made changes to address and allow breweries and tap rooms and things of that nature in the community. So we're forever looking at our zoning code and our processes. How can we streamline that? How can we eliminate redundancy between departments? We also would like to get to a point where we can have more things filed electronically. We're nowhere close to where we should be on that front. And then late last year, we were asked to get more involved in code enforcement for landscape inspections and enforcement, and also certain zoning enforcement. The current village board strategic priorities, there are these 7 that we have or are still working on. 2 reports that we're still working on that will be later this year, early next year, are the tax-based expansion report and the report on housing needs and trends. That's been postponed a little bit to focus more on the affordable housing guidelines that I'll touch upon in a few minutes. Another key accomplishment was a multi-year project at the police station. I know the chief and deputy chief probably talk more about this building, but this really started before 2010. We did a feasibility study. Then in 2015, we updated that feasibility study before we even retained consultants and architects and the construction management firm to complete the project. One of the cool features I'd just like to point out is the images on the left, the public corridor and concourse, was the ability to incorporate some sustainable elements in the building. And we feel this is a very unique element, being able to reuse and recycle the ash trees that were previously standing in front of people's homes in the parkway that got destroyed with the emerald ash borer. They were taken down and stored, not knowing what to do with them. The team working on this project started brainstorming, came up with an idea, let's see if we can find a mill that would take some of them, we can use them for benches, and then it grew. We found a window manufacturer in Wisconsin. Every window in the building is made from that ash tree that once was in Arlington Heights. All the finished carpentry, all the display cabinets, the conference room table and the administrative conference room. These are all the ash trees that used to be in people's parkways. So that's kind of a cool story. We also worked on working with the neighborhood, outreach for over a year regarding what to do with the teen center, the former teen center. And as the board knows, in March, you approved an agreement to transfer ownership of that to the library for their makerspace, which will be a great reuse of an existing old building. Over the past year, we completed one of the board's priorities from the past business plan. That was to examine ways to facilitate greater entertainment and dining and downtown as a destination. One of our goals is to make sure we stay on the cutting edge of being the downtown destination for the northwest suburbs. We have 36 dining, restaurant, entertainment establishments in the downtown. They generate a combined over $30 million in sales annually. That's not the sales tax we receive, but that's the gross revenue that they generate. So the key takeaways from our research were to encourage additional mixed-use development downtown, to continue to spur and keep our downtown vibrant and ahead of other communities, to explore long-term redevelopment of large blocks where it's not very pedestrian friendly. There are uses that are shuttered or closed at night or on the weekends, and to look at ways to enliven those. Encourage partnerships amongst restaurants and entertainment uses for joint marketing. Seek experiential retailers. Nobody's building pure retail anymore. So things like beer on the wall. It's not just a liquor store. It's much more than that. Things like Bottles and Bottega. Again, an experience that people can go to that make our downtown a little more unique. Last year, 80 new businesses called Arlington Heights their home, bringing in almost 700 jobs and filling and reoccupying almost 400,000 square feet of space. The largest one being Northrop Grumman, the Northwest Crossings development, former Motorola campus. Working with that developer, Torburn Partners, we've been able to buck the trend a little bit of large businesses and corporations moving into downtown Chicago. So Northrop Grumman moved into the building that HSBC moved into as well, bringing another 200 to 300 jobs. We also have aggressive business attraction, retention efforts, as well as helping reduce the retail, office, and industrial vacancies over the past year. A section in the report talks about current or anticipated challenges, touched upon staffing and workload, trying to balance and prioritize things in an efficient way. The retention and attraction of retail generating uses is extremely important and critical to our budget. We receive almost $20 million in food and beverage tax, sales tax, and home rules taxes. Nobody's building large big box stores anymore, so the more we can do to retain the retail businesses that we do have, the better our budget will be. Last year we did have $1.27 billion in sales according to the Illinois Department of Revenue. Those are gross sales in Arlington Heights. So we also need to continue funding of corridor improvements so that our corridors are viable, they're attractive to customers and businesses coming into the community, as well as continued downtown redevelopment and special projects like Arlington Downs and other redevelopment areas. Touching on technology a little bit, you've heard about ERP, our department. We do not have an easy way to retrieve data on a particular parcel to know everything that's occurred in the past on that. We are very much reliant on staff's memory and our memory recall. Luckily, we're still all pretty good. But that is an area that we really need to focus on. It's going to be extremely time-consuming. So how we balance that, I'm not sure, but it is very important as we move forward. Other technology that I just wanted to touch upon, drones. Amazon's testing drone delivery in certain neighborhoods on the East Coast or communities. How is that going to impact Arlington Heights? Autonomous vehicles, they're coming. It's a question of how quickly and what percentage of use those will be, and how will that impact traffic patterns. Will there be more vehicles on the road, like some predict, or will there be less? And how will it impact private parking demand as well as our public parking infrastructure? And also, how will it impact our sales tax revenue? Because sales tax revenue from automobiles is one of our biggest categories. State and nationally, internet sales, as everybody knows, and people's shopping patterns continue to change. Workforce changes. There's no longer your typical office developments that you have. The office buildings that we are getting, like HSBC, for example. 10, 15 years ago, the parking requirement would have been 3 spaces for every 1,000 square feet for that development. They wanted 8 spaces for every 1,000 square feet because they were bringing more people into that facility. Even though they have remote employees, when they're there, they're putting more into the facility that the building could occupy before. And then, we just talked briefly, the board did, with the legal department on legislation of marijuana. How do we want to handle that from a zoning point at some point down the road? Talking about retail sales, there were some questions last week that board members had during the finance department presentation. This is a 15-year snapshot of gross sales in the community. And while $1.268 billion in sales in Arlington Heights is very strong, if you look at 2004 and you were at net present value of that, we're probably stable at best. We did see a reduction below $1 billion in 2009, and it took until 2014 to get back to pre-recession terms. Talking about what are our major categories, we're importing sales from beyond our borders for automobile sales, for food, for dining and entertainment, and for drugs. Our weak areas are probably the ones that are impacted most by the internet, which is general merchandise and apparel. And then looking at 5-year history on the 3 categories that have seen the most change, you'll see food. These are your grocery stores. That's declined over a 5-year time period, primarily due to competition. There's more and more online grocery sales. Your general merchandise stores like Target all have very robust grocery components, as well as new grocery stores in surrounding communities. Also, there's more and more curbside pickup, so you can order online at a grocery store and go curbside. When you do that, that fulfillment happens in the store, and Arlington Heights still gets the sales tax. But if you order online for delivery at your home, chances are it's fulfilled at a regional fulfillment facility and driven to your home, and then Arlington Heights would not get that sales tax. So those are all some things that are putting pressure on the sales category under food. The dining and entertainment, we're seeing an increase in that. We're seeing more restaurants in our downtown and elsewhere. And then automobile sales has been the primary driver of the increase in our gross sales over the past 5 years. So some key new initiatives that we will be looking to work on over the next year or so. Affordable housing, there's been a lot of discussion over the last month on what should our affordable housing inclusionary policy be. So we're embarking on trying to refine that and bring something to the board with various options for consideration over the next few months. We also, in the next few years, will need to talk about how do we want to start allocating the funds that will come into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Right now, there's not really enough money in there to do anything. Even with the fee in lieu of that have been approved, it would still only be about $600,000. We feel we need to get at least $1 million in that fund before we can really do something significant. The trust fund ordinance, when it was created, there was a task force that was set up that included business representatives, and it does have 4 or 5 goals and standards as guidelines, and so we'll look to that and start refining that further over the next few years. Another key initiative that we'll need to look to is the future use of our zero interest loan fund. So a couple of years ago, we created this fund to give small zero interest loans to small businesses. It started a $10,000 loan and then was increased to a $20,000 loan. This fund is funded by when a business comes in and receives a Class 6B or a Class 7 tax abatement, 10% of their savings for the first 5 years is rebated to the village that goes to fund this to help other small businesses. And based upon the abatements that we've issued, we're projecting in about 10 years' time we would have a fund balance of well over $1 million. So we'll need to start talking about how can we use that to benefit the economy in Arlington Heights. Doing $20,000 zero-interest loans is not, we're not going to be able to do enough of those loans to utilize that fund. So some of the easy ones would be to increase that amount and do some larger ones where it's needed. Others would be to recreate the facade grant and loan program that we used to have downtown that was funded through tax increment financing. And when the TIF districts went away, that program went away. We could do corridor enhancements on targeted corridors to help businesses upgrade their properties. Some more risky and more challenging projects would be look to try to facilitate some kind of tech or startup incubator. I visited a couple last year. They're very interested. Is that something we could try to get in Arlington Heights? Or pop-ups in vacant storefronts to let small homeowners or businesses, get a foot in the door, start a business, and maybe grow their business. So those are just some ideas to be explored, and there are probably others. Other key initiatives that we'll be working on will be the implementation of Arlington 425. It was just approved a couple of weeks ago. Still a long way to go with that development as far as moving that forward to starting construction, as well as the proposed development on the southern portion of that block, which is being referred to as Sigwalt 16, a 16-unit, 4-story townhome development. There are other sites downtown that also have the potential for future redevelopment. The most prominent or timely one would be the former AT&T property. It's been vacant and for sale for about 1.5 years or more. Developer has that under contract. We've had a couple of meetings with them. They've not presented any specific plans yet, but we're expecting them to present some plan for some kind of mixed use there. We also, through the downtown master plan, there are other sites that have been identified for future development down the road as well. On the parking front, as the board is aware, the parking study on the right-hand side, we're moving forward with implementation for the parking guidance system and the signage to improve our garages. But we've also started exploring how can we make it fun to get people to use the other parking locations that we have. Plenty of parking at our peak times, but people aren't using. So parking lot S, the parking lots along the railroad tracks, parking by this building that people don't use. So Naperville, they've started with this tuk-tuk idea. They started with 2 tuk-tuks. It's grown to 5 or 6. They pick people up within a 3-mile radius. There's 27,418 people who live within 3 miles of downtown Arlington Heights. It's funded primarily by advertising on these 8-seater, all-electric vehicles. We've talked to a couple of people about implementing that program, but nobody can make it profitable to implement. At $25,000 a space for every garage space or more, at what point does it make sense for the village to try to incentivize that kind of development. Other communities are looking to trolleys. There's a couple of communities that do trolley systems. That's a little more expensive to implement. And then we're also looking and doing some research on charging stations for some of our public parking systems. Right now we don't have any. There are 5 or 6 companies out there that do this. There's a cost to it. There's an initial upfront cost and an annual cost, and then what the fees would be. We're still exploring that, but we're looking to continue to explore that throughout the rest of this year and bring some ideas to the board at a future date. Looking at our downtown, if we imagine Arlington Heights as the developer, we're the mall owner, and the buildings and the businesses they're the tenants. So the public realm, the streets, the sidewalks, that's where all the activity outside of those spaces occur. So how can we make our downtown, how can we make those streets be more than just a street and more than just a sidewalk, and be this really fun place for everybody who wants to come down in the tuk-tuks and trolleys and things like that, so we have plenty of parking. So one idea would be, and we've seen this in other communities, the top image, remove part of Vale Avenue, put a permeable paver system in with a curbless street. It's open during the day for street traffic and parking. You can have bollards that can easily slide in and out and can be very quickly closed. And maybe on a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday evening it's closed, and then it becomes part of the park. And you can have all sorts of activities there, and it really becomes a fun place. We close the street now, but it's still a street. It would be expensive. The image on the right is a community along the Fox River that have a curbless street. They call it the Woonov. Also, we started with the light ceiling just over the intersection. You're expanding that light ceiling to encompass more of that park area. Again, making a more vibrant, lively entertainment space. Our competition is Rosemont. It's in Mount Prospect with Randhurst Village. Schwingbeck's talking about a new entertainment venue. Other downtowns are trying to add elements that we have, so we need to look to other things to make it fun for people to come downtown. Other ideas, and some of these may work and some may not. If First Ascent builds out at Arlington Park, Arlington Downs development is a way to partner and have an exterior climbing wall up against the parking garage that's used during the summer, similar to Maggie Daley Park. They have a climbing facility there. You may have to close a section of sidewalk and parking lane to operate it. Maybe that makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but these are just some ideas. The sculpture walk we used to have, then we ran out of funds during the recession, and so that disappeared. Could we get some of our restaurants and businesses to sponsor development and design of a mini golf hole each, and you can have families come down and play mini golf. I've seen that at Navy Pier. And kind of mini-sized kids' chess pieces that you can put out in the Paver Street expansion when we don't have big events. So those are just some ideas that we can think to. They all take time, money, and other resources. Other key initiatives that are very important are the continued development of Arlington Downs. This is a 27-acre site right on our entry at Euclid. We're in constant discussion with the developer, but we need to assist them in moving forward with the next phase of their development. Then we have certain corridors and TIF districts. We have 3 TIF districts. Our top left, TIF 5, that's our Rand Road corridor. It's probably our highest concentration of retail sales generating uses outside of automobile dealerships. There are opportunities to develop and re-tenant certain spaces at South Point that are highlighted here, and also at Town and Country Mall. And then in TIF 4, these are the properties that we own, and we're in discussions with the major property owner. That's been a long-term project. We're still trying to get potential redevelopment of that area, and we've had some more positive discussions with that property owner over the last year. The Hickory-Kensington plan and TIF area is our most current TIF district, and we've got some 3D imaging that show the 4 North Hickory that was approved. The areas highlighted in yellow on the left are the future redevelopment. We've got the last phase of the Arlington Market zero lot line homes that are starting to be under construction with the 2 models, and then the 2 5-story apartment buildings. One's been approved, the other one the developer's in the process of submitting plans for. And then the long-term plan is to extend Campbell Street from Douglas through to Beverly. The board has supported funding for long-term improvements to corridors, in particular Northwest Highway and Rand Road. We spent the better part of a year and a half with IDOT trying to work out various details to implement the first phase of the Rand Road and Palatine Road improvements. And we think we're at a point where we'll be able to move forward with that late this year, early next year. The last area that I'd like to highlight is the South Arlington Heights Road corridor. I came back into town from out of town last week, drove along this corridor. Let's just say this is not the image that is representative of Arlington Heights. There are some good businesses along there, but it's not in the shape that it should be. We did a study a year ago that the board adopted, and I'll just show this image. So the South Arlington Heights Road corridor, we identified and the board approved the plan last year. There are 4 major redevelopment potential sites here going from south to north. There's what we call a gateway opportunity site at Algonquin Road and Arlington Heights Road. There's the Gulf Road and Arlington Heights Road properties, and then there's a couple of sites further north. We've been working with Bradford Allen and companies. They own a majority of this site, and we're looking at ways to redevelop that property. There's about a 17-acre site there. You could get significant redevelopment there. They're teaming with a very interested developer as well. Then we have the former Yanni's and Wellington properties. Again, very unfriendly from a pedestrian point of view, so how can we provide and get better pedestrian access as well as facilitate redevelopment in this area? The site at Sigwalt and Arlington Heights Road is an office building built in the 50s or 60s. A developer is proposing a plan called the Boulevard. It's 240 units. It's gone to Design Commission, and they're seeking early review to discuss the affordable housing component. Some images here you'll see from the master plan that the board adopted. Will take a lot of study to meet and talk with the Illinois Department of Transportation to see whether they will allow some of these improvements. And then lastly, TIF District 4. We completed a market feasibility study last year and have been discussing with the property owner potential redevelopment. The study identified that this center is too deep, which we knew for a long time, and was too large, and there's insufficient retailers to occupy that, so it needs to shrink to about 90,000 square feet. You could have residential behind it and small restaurant outlet buildings in the front. Right now this corridor is very auto-driven. There's about 35,000 vehicles a day travel along Gulf Road and Algonquin Roads, and 25,000 plus on Arlington Heights Road. But it does have great opportunities to try to facilitate future redevelopment and be a great corridor and gateway into the community. That's really one of the first images many customers see when they come into our community. So in conclusion, we have a dedicated staff. We are always working towards the betterment of our community. We manage many multiple complex projects as well as small projects for homeowners. Emerging technologies and changes in the marketplace are going to continue to have a profound impact on what we do in Arlington Heights, as well as our ability to stay on the cutting edge of growth potential and stay ahead of the competition. Funding for corridor improvements is critical. The board has supported that on Northwest Highway and Rand Road, and now we need to look at how we can do that along South Arlington Heights Road as well. And then retention and attraction of revenue generating uses when they're available and when we can get them in the community, and the continued enhancement of downtown. Those are all key important elements that we need to look to as we move forward. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Charles. A great report. And again, thank you to you and all of your team for all the great work over the past very challenging year. I know you've been very busy, and so we thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Just what you mentioned briefly, and the vacancy rates were going down, but we still have less vacancies than surrounding neighboring communities. Is that right?
Correct. So for retail, downtown first floor retail is vacancy rate is 6.3%. Community-wide, it's 8.1%. And the northwest suburban area is 8.9%, so we're below that. Our office vacancy, we're below the northwest rate. Our industrial and flex space, we are higher than the surrounding communities for that.
Okay. All right, thanks. Questions for the planning department? Trustee LaBedz.
I'll ask a question. Thank you, Charles. Good report, and thank you to you and your staff for everything that you do, because we don't have a lot of questions because we see you all a lot. But I just had you were talking about the potential developments in the South Corridor area with apartments. And so I just wonder, at what point are we at a saturation level for apartments? Is that something we have to worry about yet, or are we still, or is the fact that this is really spread out fairly, given the fact that we're such a long community, not something that be concerned about because that area doesn't specifically have?
I think there will be a point where we'll have to be concerned about that. I don't think we're there right now. All the market studies that we've seen show a strong demand for apartments. And since the 80s, the only apartment buildings that have been built in Arlington Heights is Parkview and the conversion at Arlington Downs. So those are the only two developments that have been built in Arlington Heights. So downtown, with Arlington 425, if the AT&T redevelopment, and then the close proximity of Hickory Kensington, there may come a point where, this particular area down here, we'll have to be very watchful of that market. On South Arlington Heights Road, I think that's a different market, closer to O'Hare. It's the competition there is going to be slightly different. Arlington Downs, I think, also is a little different in their location. It's going to be a little more competition from what's happening in Schaumburg.
All right, thanks.
That's a good question. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor. Charles, your department always does great work. Just for a young person who went to school here in the downtown, the way it used to look and the way it looks now, after you've been here for what 8 or 9 years now? How long have you been here?
Just a few, add a 2 on the front.
You've been here a long time and done some great things. And our planning department, you have a good group there. So the things that we get to see and enjoy, and the other people in the neighborhoods who come out and enjoy our downtown, is pretty outstanding. Some of the things you talked about tonight, though, were really interesting. I really liked, what would you call those little cars for parking?
Oh, the tuk-tuks?
Tuk-tuk?
Yeah.
Where does that come from? What does that mean, tuk-tuk?
I don't know where it comes from, but
it's a Southeast Asian.
Is it? Is that a brand of the car or something?
I think it's three-wheel vehicle kind of.
Okay.
I've been on one in China, but it wasn't motorized. So.
No. It was real horsepower.
Yeah.
So I think that's an outstanding idea. I'd love to see something like that. We've talked, there have been people in think tanks that we've been talking with outside of the Village Hall here about some sort of a community-wide effort for a valet system, that maybe there could be certain corners where valets could get cars taken away to the garages and at the end of the night, so you could just drive up to any of the main intersections downtown and there'd be a valet guy there. This is interesting too, but I think we need to pursue this a little bit more, because parking, I think you hear more often than not that there's an issue, perceived or real.
Sure.
So things like that are great, and the trolley even, bringing people from the north side into downtown, from the south side into downtown, all good stuff. Really like to see that little patio area done out of Vail. That's a neat idea, having that universal space opened up on a Friday night and a Saturday night. That's a great concept. So, like everything you brought in tonight, nice job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, You had mentioned about the issue with the CDBG funds, the money that was previously allocated toward the senior center debt, which is no longer. So have we come up with any thoughts or ideas on how to use that?
So last year and this year, the major use of those funds have been in our roadway program with working with the engineering department. There are only a limited number of neighborhoods that comply and meet the HUD criteria. So when those neighborhoods are up for repaving, we've been using CDBG funds for that portion. And we've looked at the next 3 years of road program and whether those neighborhoods would qualify. So we have about another 3 years of neighborhood road repaving that could be funded by CDBG funds, and then that allows our CAP funds to do a little bit more. So that's been the number one thing. We're also looking at this year about $50,000 in not surveillance, but panic alarms and security at the senior center. That is also an eligible item. But after that, we will need to look at what can we use those CDBG funds for. They have to be used for brick and mortar type developments.
So refresh my memory again as far as what residential areas would qualify to have road work done that under this criteria?
So it's based on data that HUD releases, which is basically an update of census data on a block by block level that has to have a certain percentage of residents in that block that have incomes below, the 60% AMI level. We only have a few neighborhoods and blocks that meet that criteria.
Okay. Would the any of the work that we're doing downtown qualify for any of that?
The only work downtown that would qualify would be the elements that are ADA accessible. So ADA ramps and things like that are automatically eligible without any income qualification. So when we do ADA ramps, yes. Probably the rest of the sidewalks, probably not.
Because I think we're doing some of that as part of the downtown rework, right?
I'm sure we're always doing ADA ramps as part of the sidewalk improvement program, yeah.
Okay.
It's a question of how many of them and can they easily be broken out. And then there are different reporting requirements which are more onerous when you use CDBG funds. So if the dollar figure isn't large enough, usually the contractor puts the price up to do all that paperwork, and it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But it is something we can look at.
Yeah. And then as far as the zero interest loans, you talked about maybe increasing, the amount of loans that you make. But have we set out any kind of potential criteria for doing it? What would qualify under that?
Yes, the zero interest loan program right now does have criteria for eligible businesses. So it can be for machinery equipment, it could be for interior build out, expansion. But with $20,000, some businesses, it's not worth it for them because the loan that they need is much more significant. So, or if we had an old shopping center that we wanted to assist them with an upgrade in the facade, $20,000 isn't going to go very far. So if we made a larger loan, which we did in the past in downtown when we had TIF-funded facade grant programs, so that's something we're looking into.
So we're going to start a program maybe to offer that, create some kind of materials to maybe offer people to do new awnings or signage downtown or other businesses in the area?
We haven't started that yet because the fund is still building up. So there'll come a point where we need to do that. So we can project how much money we're going to get from these different tax abatements. So we're ready for that.
Okay. And then I know you'll have a report for us on the affordable housing. So we'll wait for that. So
we are working on that.
Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. And as Trustee Tinaglia said, you and the planning department have been very busy and done a great job. Having said that, I'm trying not to hit this too hard. You listed the Davis Street landscape enhancement as an accomplishment, and it was, and it looked great. Did we get any kind of guarantee on the trees that went in there?
Yeah. So the evergreens that died, we wanted them to be protected, and that's, with how busy Public Works are, that wasn't possible.
Yes.
So they didn't last the winter. We have a guarantee. They would have been replaced by now, except we've had too much rain.
Okay.
So the plan is they're supposed to be replaced the week of June 10th.
Great. Okay.
They
Thanks.
won't, but they're not going to be replaced with evergreens. We're going to go with a more deciduous, salt-tolerant plant material that hopefully will get established during the summer and then survive the winter.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you also in the report mentioned expansion of the north garage.
Yes.
Do we have any idea yet what that would look like? Because isn't that garage sort of landlocked? Are you talking about going vertical?
It is landlocked. I think prior to you being on the board authorized a study of the north garage, and we hired Walker Parking to do a study to see whether we could go up. You could do that, but it would just cost prohibitive due to the need to re-support so many of the columns and footings and foundations. So the concept they came up with was just going horizontal across Eastman, somewhat similar to what we did across Highland, to capture close to 100 spaces if it were necessary in the future.
Okay.
But to do that is expensive. That's about $45,000 to $50,000 a space to go across the street with a 2-story clear span underneath. We did also have them include in the estimate the ability to drop down screens around that first level. So if we wanted to go back to a Chris Kindle Mart that we had there years ago, you could do it easily instead of renting a $50,000 or $100,000 tent. So there could be some benefits for that if there's a need to do that for parking demand. But that's not what our last study said we needed that, but it is one of the few options we have to expand physical parking.
Well, and as I know from personal experience, I know that garage does fill up, so that's why it caught my interest. And then the last thing, it wasn't necessarily called out in the report, but I appreciate you talking about the tuk-tuks, but also the charging stations. That's been something that I've been very interested in, as I'm sure you know. So thank you for bringing that up in the actual presentation. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Trustee Canty.
Yeah, so I think I'm anxiously awaiting the affordable housing report, so I'll reserve some of those questions and comments. In your written report, you talked about Arlington Park and the long-term sustainability and how that needs to be a focus for us, as well as kind of a focal point of the village. I haven't seen a lot in terms of ideas beyond people asking about video gambling. Do we have some thoughts and proposals out there for how we can help?
No, not specifically, but that's been on the state legislators' list for probably 20, 30 years. It is 325 acres. It's a beautiful state-of-the-art facility. So I had it in the report. I kind of glossed over it in the presentation, but it is something we should keep on our radar. And I think Village Manager Randy Reckless has had discussions at the state level too.
Yeah, we work closely with the racetrack, and obviously, it's such a big part of our identity. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we've received direction from the board that we want to make sure that we're doing everything and anything we can do to make sure that the track stays viable as long as possible. They are looking at there are multiple bills kind of in play right now that would do different things for the track. But obviously, we're planners here, and we have to look at all possibilities, including if for some reason the track were no longer a track, and what would that mean? And we do have those discussions. We hope it doesn't happen anytime soon, but if it were, we've talked about what types of utilities would need to be constructed, and what would that mean for our police department and fire department and other departments in terms of responses. And so we certainly there isn't any kind of document or plan, but it is something that we kind of war game from time to time a little bit and talk about.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further, Trustee Scaletta?
Thanks. Charles, you mentioned 1.27 billion in sales. So does that mean that all of those sales are sales tax generators?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, just making sure we're clear. And when you talked about our industrial vacancy is higher than normal, isn't that true that industrial in the Northwest Corridor is it's challenging for people to find locations?
So, yeah, this Northwest submarket vacancy based on CoStar for industrial and flex space, so that's your flex space, is 5%, and we're just over 11. So we have a couple of buildings that are larger right now, but we have one potential big tenant that's going to probably change that scenario very soon.
Okay. So the challenge is that the spaces are larger than the need.
A lot of the challenge is the new warehousing. There's a shortage of new warehouse distribution facilities, in the Chicago market area. That's why we saw Hamilton Partners and the proposal down off Algonquin Road, take older industrial space and tear it down and build new warehouse distribution facilities. So there's a shortage of that. There's probably an overabundance of smaller, older industrial spaces that don't meet everybody's needs.
So not necessarily bigger, they're smaller and older.
Correct. We have one large vacant facility that's probably increasing our percentage above the Northwest market, and that's up at Northwest Crossings, the old Motorola campus. It's about 250,000 square foot vacancy, but we have somebody that's very soon going to be going in there, so that'll change our percentage significantly.
Okay. I appreciated your presentation. I will tell you that you lost me a little bit when you were doing the drone with the music and you talking about it, and none of it matched to what was going on. So I'm going to watch it again on replay, but I liked all the information you were providing, but what you were saying wasn't matching up with the visual, and the music on the loop was...
Yeah, I turned the music down earlier this afternoon. I don't know how it came back again, so I apologize about that.
Okay. No, it seemed like there was a lot of good information. I was just trying to link it all together, and that was it was challenging while you were trying to listen to you and having the music droning.
It would have been worse if I'd have sung.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, anything further for the planning department? Anything from the audience? Mr. Moans. Why don't you come forward, because we're on the video.
I just had a question for Mr. Perkins. I'm just going to ask you, is the Taylor Morrison townhomes, that's the same as Sigwalt 16?
Yes.
Okay, and is that scheduled to go to the Housing Commission anytime soon for affordable housing review? I mean, does that have to go to the Housing Commission at some point?
It will go to the Housing Commission. It hasn't been scheduled yet.
Okay, but it will at some point.
Yes.
Okay. The CDBG first public hearing, has that been posted yet? When is that going to be scheduled?
Yes, that's posted. It's on our website, and it will be June 10th.
I think it's I'm sorry, June 10th.
June 10th.
It's the
June 10th.
second Monday in June.
Okay, and that's been in the public, it's been in the paper?
Yes.
It's public. Okay.
Yeah, all the required public notice has been made. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charles.
Thank you very much.
All right. And last but not least, the police department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, one of my favorite pictures We finally did it.
There you go.
You know, it was a long haul. We were actually after this project for almost 13 years, 13 and a half years. That's how long it took to come to fruition. Extremely pleased. It's worked out very well from us since we moved in. Nothing but compliments, both publicly and privately. We're getting a lot of use out of the public space. We're holding trainings in the community room. It's being very heavily used, and again, it was planned for the future. And we're extremely happy with it. So I want to say thank you. Take this opportunity to say thank you. This was a happy day, December 18th. I commented earlier, it's not too often that you see a group of elected officials all smiling at the same time. And that's pretty much what we had in this case. And that was a wonderful event, followed by this event on March 16th, the dedication of the Arlene J. Mulder Community Room, our past mayor. Very happy, followed by an open house attended by literally thousands of people. Again, nothing but compliments. I should mention that I'm going to be assisted this evening with my 3 deputy chiefs. I'm putting them to work. They're going to talk about areas of specialization that they are responsible for. And I thought it would be good for them to experience presenting before the board and for you to get to know them. Moving on, we conduct a resident survey every 3 years. Our last one was in 2017, and I thought you might find it interesting to know what our public, what our citizens think is important, what they think the police department should be focusing in on. And you can see from the responses, most important, responding to crimes in progress, followed by enforcing DUI laws, investigating drug sales, discouraging gang activity, discouraging crime and patrol, investigating burglaries, providing 24-hour patrol, notifying citizens of potential for crime. Those are the crime alerts that we put out in a consistent fashion. We have literally thousands of followers now to our social media sites. And providing drug violence and prevention in the schools, and we make a number of presentations throughout the course of the school year. What the public doesn't want us involved in is enforcing water usage, followed by enforcing appearance ordinances, enforcing domestic animal ordinances, enforcing all other parking violations, discouraging tobacco sales to minors, and enforcing handicap parking ordinances. But we get a very high response rate to our surveys. So this isn't a small sample size, it's a rather significant one. Next. Great. Our workload indicators. These are the factors that we think are important to watch trends from one year to the next to the next. Our number of DUI arrests were down once again. It's more of a long-term pattern that we're seeing. We are seeing more and more of the public use Uber drivers, and we do roadside safety checks, and you can't believe the number of people that are taking this form of transportation as opposed to driving. We think that has contributed greatly to the number of DUIs, and we're not alone in this category. All through the northwest suburbs, they're seeing the same exact pattern. Our number of total traffic citations were down this last year, primarily due to the fact that we were short officers. We were short staffing most of the year. We had a hard time replacing officers in a timely fashion, so we carried multiple vacancies for multiple months. Deputy Chief Nick Pecora is going to cover some of that with you in just a moment. Part 1 crimes. This is the good news. They dropped once again by about 7%. And you're wondering, what are Part 1 crimes? They include homicide, criminal sexual assault, robbery, burglary, aggravated assault, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. In Arlington Heights, we have very little crimes against person. It just doesn't happen that frequently. Most of our crime is retail theft and theft from unlocked motor vehicles. Now, in terms of retail theft, there are certain stores that seem to be the target of these individuals. Jewel Osco, Lowe's, Dick's Sporting Goods, Goodwill, believe it or not, Target, and Kohl's. And you can usually count on most of these popping up with the police reports to us several times a month. Moving on, our crime rate. We hit a new all-time historic low for crime rate in 2018. The crime rate has never been lower in Arlington Heights. You can see the general pattern for the last 10 years. For the last 10 years, it's almost exactly a 50% decrease in Index 1 crimes. So that's very good news, something we're very pleased about. I'm now going to ask Deputy Chief Nick Pecora to do his thing. Nick is in charge of the administrative division. That includes training, it includes grants, it includes working with the Firing Police Commission, CALIA, which is our accreditation, and I think he'll speak about most of those items. Nick?
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. It's my pleasure to present the next couple of slides from the Police Department's report. The first slide is a snapshot of the survey the Chief was mentioning earlier. This particular snapshot encompasses the 11, 14, and 17 surveys that are sent to random sampling of residential dwellings. The performance measures that we capture, you can see in the left column, the competence of the officer, the demeanor of the officer, the fairness of the officer, and the courtesy of the officer to the resident that he or she is dealing with. The important column is the first column, under excellent. You can see that the numbers are trending in the right direction. The majority of the responses received, and I may indicate that in your average survey we get about a little more than 2 digits or a digit response. We were getting 30% responses from the surveys from our residents, and that's a very favorable response. So of those responses, it's trending in the right direction. The needle's going in the right way, showing that our services to the community are rated at a very high level. So what do we do to get those great resources on board? The entry-level hiring process for police officers is a very robust process. We work tirelessly with human resources to start the process. The people at Human Resources help us determine what the recruitment team is going to give out to prospective applicants. Our recruitment team gets trained with benefits and everything that a new employee will derive as an employee. So that's part of the training, part of the recruitment policy or team. Sergeant Ed Commerce heads up our recruitment team. He has a diverse group of officers that travel to job fairs, universities, communities to try and get the deepest candidate pool. When we announce that we are testing for entry level, we try and cast the widest net so we get the widest and deepest pool of candidates. We work with the Fire and Police Commission. They are the gatekeepers of this process. I'd like to express my thanks to Chair Lynn Sabo, Trustee Lee Hettinger, and Trustee Luis Ramirez-Alonso. They work tirelessly to help us make sure that the strongest and the most qualified candidate gets through the front door. Talking about the front door, the pre-screening process is rigorous. Once the commission establishes an eligibility list and we have a vacancy, Human Resources will say, let's tap the next person on the list. The pre-employment screening process starts. Our detective is assigned to conduct a background investigation. It's a very thorough background investigation. We contact the individual, make sure that he or she is of sound mind and body, fingerprinting, criminal history record. We check neighborhoods, prior employers, to make sure that we are bringing on board a quality person who has a good moral compass. After the person passes the background investigation, it's on to the polygraph exam. Standard questions are asked of all candidates to determine their integrity. After that test is passed, a psychological assessment. We want to make sure that they are built strong enough to handle the rigors of police work. And after that assessment receives favorable review from our industrial psychologist, it's off to Northwest Community Hospital, Ock Health, where there's a comprehensive medical and a treadmill stress test is completed at the hospital. After the person receives a fit for duty, a job offer is made. And what's next? Well, the first person they see then is our village clerk. Becky comes over to the police department the first day the employee starts, and she makes them raise their right hand and swear to uphold the laws and the same oath of office the mayor administers at the village board meeting to promote ease. And once the person's on board, there's two different hiring processes that the person could enter. It's either the entry level, where the person has no prior experience, or it's the certified officer program. The certified officer program allows us to recruit officers from neighboring departments or statewide that are in good standing, certified with the State of Illinois Training Board as police officers. They have 2 years of experience, and they are off probation for at least a year. That allows us to recruit talent, and it allows us to save the money of sending them to the police academy and the salary while they're there, and they get into the field training program, which is an expedited process when you already have the basic police knowledge. As for the entry-level candidate, after he or she is sworn in, we prefer to use the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy at College of DuPage. That's a 14-week basic police academy where they are hit with all the academics, practical exercises, enough to bring them back to the department, where we can take them as a raw recruit and put the officer into a 15-week field training program. So the officer rides with several different field training officers, so he or she can gain experience and knowledge from not only one person, so we don't have a clone. There's 4 people that help mold this new officer. So if you add 14 to 15, you get an employee that's in training for 6 months before he or she is certified for solo patrol. So it's a rigorous process. Through the process, though, there are some disqualifiers, and we only let the strongest person through. So if there's character flaws, quality flaws, we take that back to the Fire and Police Commission, and they usually remove the person from further consideration. This slide represents the demographics of our police department. It's a 4-column table that deals with race and ethnicity on the left. The service population is the village's census. In a perfect world, our police department, the demographics of the police department would mirror the community that we serve. And that's the ultimate goal, to strive for a mirror image. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. As I mentioned, we throw the wide net to try and recruit everyone that is eligible, but through the vetting process, the strong and qualified survive. The available workforce is obtained through the Illinois Department of Employment Security. Those are Cook County numbers, so they're a little skewed because it's not representative of Arlington Heights or a region. It's the entire county. We do use numbers from collar communities, which are more representative of Arlington Heights demographics when we do comparative analysis. The third column is our sworn police status. We have 104 officers on board right now. By ordinance, we're authorized 109, so we are chasing 5 vacancies. As of next Monday, we'll be chasing 3. We are onboarding 2 new officers next week. One comes to us from Rockford with several years of experience, and as an interesting side note, his grandfather was a police officer in Arlington Heights for 32 years, and his father retired from Rolling Meadows as a sergeant. So we're excited to bring him on board. And then the newer officer is going to be one of those entry-level officers I talked about that's going to have to go to the police academy. And the last column is our current female sworn population. Right now we only have 10. The national standard is 12%. We're a little below that. But as of the first of the year, we did have 12. We lost 2 to retirements, one in January and one in March. This particular bar graph kind of depicts the sworn administration. So it's, in our agency, it's 9 individuals, 5 commanders, 3 deputy chiefs, and the chief. If you take a look at Arlington Heights, which is number 5, we're at 8.25%. So we are not a top-heavy organization. I think we're in line with our comparables, and we're below a number of communities that have a more robust administration. This particular bar graph represents the number of sworn personnel per 1,000 residents. This is an FBI formula. It's a basic formula that says that you should have X amount of police officers for every 1,000 residents. It's not a perfect formula. In Arlington Heights, we like to base our staffing based on workloads. It's a data-driven study, a resource analysis. It helps us better to determine if we have appropriate staffing. But if you look at the FBI standard, out of the 19 communities that are up there, we are the lowest at 1.44%. And the last slide that I'm going to present is our sworn police personnel by years for max benefit. This helps us with succession planning. So the top indicator there is people that are less, sworn staff that are less than 5 years from maximum benefit. And when I say maximum benefit, it's an officer that has reached at least 50 years of age and 30 years of service, which entitles them to the maximum benefits. So in the next 5 years, we could potentially lose 15 personnel, and I believe the mix is about half sworn line staff and half supervisors or above. Those with 5 to 10 years of service are entitled to max benefits. There's 17 of them, so that's not that bad. And then those with greater than 10 years from max benefits is the majority of our workforce, and that's 72. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Chief Mark Recker and let him continue with our presentation.
By way of introduction, Mark is responsible for the Patrol Division, which also includes the Patrol Bureau.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mark Recker. I am the Deputy Chief of Patrol Division, and that incorporates the Patrol Bureau and the Traffic Bureau. The Patrol Bureau are the men and women you often see in uniform in marked squad cars. They're answering emergency calls, they're answering other calls for service, directed patrol, general enforcement. Kind of the traditional role that we all think of when we think of police officer. I'm going to talk a little bit more tonight about the Traffic Bureau and what those officers do, what their mission is. It's kind of a less traditional, and maybe in an effort to kind of maybe make you more familiar with what it is those people do. And why we think it's important. So, in a word, why we think a robust traffic safety program is important is traffic safety. Our vehicle to get there is this traffic safety program is, in a phrase, reduction of crash experience village-wide. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. We have a 5-component approach to that. We have a collaborative relationship with engineering, our village engineering department. What we will do for them, though not particularly a police mandate, we'll help provide them data, survey data, when we get a complaint from a resident regarding not enough yield signs or stop signs in their neighborhood or a reduction of speed limits, something like that. Again, not necessarily a police mandate, but we will provide survey data to the engineering department, and ultimately they'll make the call on whether that's appropriate or not. So we do have a collaborative relationship with engineering. Education and encouragement, kind of a less traditional approach to modify driver behavior. Try to educate people as to why modifying behavior, such as wearing your seatbelt, not speaking on your cell phone while you're driving, speeding, etc., is important to their own safety. And then, of course, the more traditional enforcement role, which is, writing traffic tickets. We have an evaluation process of all that to see if this approach is working. As you can see, we're kind of proud of that. We think it is. The 10-year trend across the country up to 2016 was an increase in crash rate, and we have seen a 15-year low in 2018 in our crash rate here. You can see the bolded numbers indicate the 15-year trend, and that parenthetical information is from 17 to 18. So you can see, we believe we've been successful with our traffic safety program, the goal being crash reduction village-wide. That is the trend line, kind of a graphic depiction of that information. And again, you can see we're trending in the right direction. When we evaluate this data, one of the things that we like to do is we like to target our enforcement approach. That means we're going to go to where the crashes are occurring, and this is an updated list that we do every year of our top 10 crash locations in the village. You can see the green on the right would indicate a drop and a percent change, so in the green is good. And you'll see, of course, we do have one in a red column where we had an increase in traffic experience at that particular location. One of the things that we have seen is sometimes these remain pretty steady, but sometimes intersections will appear and then disappear and then come back 2 years later. An example of that might be Palatine and Windsor. That comes and goes depending on different factors. A lot of the things has to do sometimes with construction on Palatine Road several years ago. That was one of our top 10s for that reason, things like that. So that targeted approach of putting our enforcement efforts where the crashes are occurring. And the other thing we do is the other analytic and metric we pay particular attention to is the causal factors for the crashes. So not only where the crashes are occurring, but what's causing them. And as you can see, over 35% of our crashes are caused by speeding, probably no surprise to anyone. 57% are intersection related, kind of goes back to why we target those intersections, because that's what our data is starting to reveal. Interesting, you'll note that distracted driving causes more crashes in Arlington Heights than DUI. That kind of an interesting thing, so something we target specifically. Another interesting kind of stat is that unrestrained occupant crash, the word on seatbelts is obviously getting out. So our compliance rate in Arlington Heights is rather high. Now, you have to temper that data with the fact that when an officer arrives on a crash and is doing an investigation, a lot of time the occupants are out of the car and we're taking their word that they were in their seatbelt. So there is that to consider. But overall, we can say that the word's getting out on seatbelts, and we've been pretty successful. This is just kind of a graphic depiction of our traffic safety program and the robust program that it is. I would direct your attention to those kind of photos on the left there. In the last 4 years, we have taken first place in the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association's Traffic Safety Challenge. The Illinois Chief sponsors this competition every year. And we submit application regarding our traffic safety program. And again, last 4 years in a row, we've taken first place. And I want to say 5 years ago, when the International Association of Chiefs sponsored this competition, we were rated the best traffic safety program in the nation. So we're pretty proud of that traffic safety program. Kind of the encouragement and education aspect, if you go to a hugely successful program for us is our traffic calming efforts, you'll see those speed limit signs. Your speed, you'll see them around the village. Anecdotally, I will tell you that the community seems to love those, and we don't have enough of them to put on everybody's street. But it's a complaint-driven situation, and we rotate them through the village as we can. And this year, probably come budget time in the summer, we'll probably be asking for a few more. It's been that successful. You'll notice right below that, the image below that, we do safety seat inspections and safety seat installations. We've had an increase in that. Village residents can come by appointment. New parents, we can look at their seat. We have certified installers and inspectors. It's a state certification program that they go through. So they can make sure that seats are installed properly, or they'll do it. We also do car seat rodeos, so we'll do all-day events where people will come and we'll do the installations for them. So we're pretty proud of that one. One of the encouragement things, the Cradle Your Distraction program, that was a collaborative effort we got into with Napleton. And what we did in that regard is we would notice a violation of cell phone use. We would pull the car over, and instead of issuing them a citation, we'd offer them a cell phone cradle. Now, we wouldn't be encouraging them to speak on their cell phone while they're driving, but the cradle does allow them to do so within the limits of the statute, of the current law, the one push button and then you can talk. So at least your hands are on the wheel type of thing. And we got a lot of good press on that. In fact, Naperville stole it from us. Directly under that, one of our newest programs was an education at the high school level. What we did is we engaged the district high schools And the competition was to put together a PSA regarding why speeding is dangerous and why you shouldn't do it, especially as it relates to young drivers. And as you can see, the Buffalo Grove High School entry is the one that won. So those kind of non-traditional approaches to the traffic safety program is just some of the stuff we wanted to highlight and kind of maybe familiarize you with some of this, again, less traditional roles of the patrol division. And I'll turn it over to my counterpart, Deputy Chief Nate Hayes.
Nate is the Division Deputy Chief for Criminal Investigations and Community Services. Nate?
Chief. Good evening. It's my honor to speak to you about a couple of issues that we as a police department are not only addressing, but they're nationwide concerns, and that's mental health and also opioid abuse and overdose. So I'm going to speak to you shortly about those two issues. The first I'm going to speak about is in regards to addressing mental health concerns. We've pledged to be part of the One Mind campaign, which is run through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And the One Mind campaign, I'm going to read this because this is just a definition off of their website. It focuses on uniting local communities, public safety organizations, and mental health organizations so that the three become of one mind. To join the campaign, law enforcement agencies must pledge to implement 4 promising practices over a 12 to 36-month time frame. So the first is we have to have establish a clearly defined and sustainable partnership with a community mental health organization. We've achieved that through our partnership with the Alexian Brothers Center for Mental Health up on Kennecott. We've done many programs with them, and I also personally serve on their board of directors, assignment that I took on last year. So we're very connected with them, and we try to work hand in hand. Second component would be developing a model policy to implement police response to persons affected by mental illness. This is covered by our General Order 41.17, which directs and governs our officers' response to incidents involving people with mental illness. Third component is to train and certify sworn officers and selected non-sworn staff in mental health first aid training or other equivalent mental health awareness course. We achieved that and finished that early this year through our yearly training. We had all of our officers and personnel put through mental health first aid training. And the final component is providing crisis intervention team training. That's ongoing with us, but we currently have approximately 30% of our department trained in CIT. All right, as I get into the opioid abuse, the issue of opioid abuse and overdose is one that law enforcement as a whole is wrestling with. The police department is committed to a multi-pronged approach to combating this issue in Arlington Heights. And before I get into the slides, I'm just going to read you some sobering statistics. Over the past 4 years, for the year 2016, we had 48 overdoses. 2 of those were saved through the use of Narcan or naloxone, and unfortunately 4 of those resulted in death. In 2017, we had 28 overdoses. 5 of those we were able to save through the use of naloxone or Narcan, and 5 resulted in death. In 2018, there were 21 overdoses. Again, 5 we were able to save through naloxone and Narcan, and unfortunately 8 of those resulted in death. And this year, as of today, we've had 17 overdoses, 5 of which we've been able to save, and 2 have resulted in death. And when I say saves, those are our police officers administering it. That's not counting the fire department numbers for what they're applying through Narcan and naloxone. So what we've come up to try to combat this is that multi-pronged approach. The first is the CARE program, which I believe some of you may be familiar with. The CARE program was an 18-month ordeal of putting this together and researching and looking around and seeing what other communities in the area and parts of the country were doing to try to come up with an innovative approach to try to address this issue. And what the CARE program is, it's a law enforcement assisted deflection initiative designed to provide quick access to substance use treatment and recovery programs to help residents of Arlington Heights and outlying communities. The police department received a grant from the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority to develop a proactive response to combat the growing number of deaths related to substance abuse disorder. We achieved this by collaborating with Live for Lolly, Omni Youth Services, Brightside Clinic, the Arlington Heights Fire Department, the Village of Arlington Heights Health and Human Services Department, and Linden Oaks Behavioral Health and Northwest Community Hospital. We rolled out the program late last summer, and since we rolled it out, there have been 20 referrals made through the pamphlets that we give out from our officers. Of those 20 referrals, 2 have followed up for follow-up treatment through the program. We're in the process of pursuing additional grant funding through a collaboration with the Elk Grove Village Police Department and the Schwingbeck Police Department to try to bolster our program. The next facet is our drug take-back program. The National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day addresses a crucial public safety and public health issue. According to the 2017 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 6 million Americans misused controlled prescription drugs. The study shows that a majority of abused prescription drugs were obtained from family and friends, often from the home medicine cabinet. The DEA's drug take-back program, which we're a part of, is a twice yearly run event. It happens in April and October. We've participated every year since April of 2012. I think we only missed 2, the first 2. The results from the April 2019 drive nationwide involve 4,969 law enforcement partners using 6,258 collection sites, and a total of 937,443 pounds of pills were collected just in April through this DEA event. Since inception in April of 2012, almost 12 million pounds of pills have been collected through this DEA-run program. In addition to the twice yearly Take-Back Day, the police department now has a 24-hour collection receptacle in the lobby. Aside from what I mentioned about the pills falling into the wrong hands, there's the added benefit of people not knowing how to dispose of their pills and flushing them down the toilet, which can create threats to our environment, to our water. So having both the twice-a-year plan and the ability for residents to come into our police department in the front lobby and get rid of unwanted or unused prescription medication is huge. Local enforcement and task force participation. Our detectives continue to investigate local incidents and complaints of drug sales at the detective level, just strictly within Arlington Heights. But we also have 2 task forces that we have detectives participating in. The first is the North Central Narcotics Task Force that was formed in 2014, and we were one of the inaugural members. Other agencies, it's overseen by the state police, but other agencies that take part are the Algonquin Police Department, Elk Grove Village Police Department, Hanover Park Police Department, Huntley Police Department, Palatine Police Department, Schaumburg Police Department, Streamer Police Department, and the Wheeling Police Department. In addition to that, since 2004, we've had a detective assigned to the DEA as a task force officer. So we have the ability to combat narcotics and drug dealing at a local level. If it's a little larger than that, now we have a community, a regional approach with the North Central Task Force, but we also have somebody plugged into the DEA for things that can get larger than that. We also, community education and prevention. The Community Services Bureau conducts drug trend presentations at schools and occasionally to adult organizations. They distribute pamphlets and educate the public at certain special events, including National Night Out, Frontier Days, and Senior Celebration Day. Myself, the Chief of Police, Commander Pinello, and our Victim Service Coordinator, and other members of our police department have participated in multiple community forums over the past couple of years directly related to opioid abuse and substance abuse. The last component I'm going to talk about is Narcan, which I alluded to earlier where I talked about our officers having saves. Narcan, or naloxone, it's a medication designed to rapidly reverse opioid overdose. It can very quickly restore normal respiration to a person whose breathing has slowed or stopped as a result of overdosing with heroin or prescription opioid pain medications. We began our program in 2014 through a partnership with Live for Lolly, where we were trained in how to administer the naloxone and received naloxone auto-injectors, which we were able to issue to our officers. We now use naloxone inhalers, and every one of our officers is equipped with 2 of them. I'm happy to say that through some of this current grant and the one that we're pursuing, we are now able to purchase our naloxone through grant funding. The next part, I have to see if I can make it play. I'm going to leave you with a video. See if it works. Perfect, it did work. Okay.
My name is Joe Pinello. I'm a commander with the Arlington Heights Police Department. I coordinate the community addiction and recovery effort, also known as CARE. CARE is a new initiative with the goal of assisting individuals suffering from substance abuse disorder find a pathway to treatment and recovery. An individual who is voluntarily requesting participation in CARE will be treated with the utmost respect, the same treatment that we expect any citizen, any resident to get from our officers. If a person enters the Arlington Heights Police Department as a participant in CARE and they possess illegal substances or paraphernalia, those items can be turned over to an officer with the Arlington Heights Police Department. At no point will we come back and attempt to charge that person with any crime related to the items turned over to the office. It is truly an amnesty program when it comes to that.
Liv Ferlali is very excited to be part of the Arlington Heights CARE program. Anyone can walk into the Arlington Heights Police Department and say that they need help with a substance use disorder. The police do their part, and then they would call the 800 number that we've set up for this. And once we get that call, it is our intention to physically go to the police department in order to screen this person, talk to them about their background, their use disorder, and try to determine with the help of the client what might be the best case scenario for them to seek treatment or freedom from their substance use disorder.
We start medications like Suboxone when patients are in withdrawal. Some patients will see us and it's a little bit early, and in those cases, we will work with them to determine the optimal time to start treatment. The goal of medication is to reverse the opioid withdrawal symptoms. When a patient first starts these medications, they're going to feel better right away. I'll explain to patients that they will probably feel about 70% better on the first day. And over the next several days, I expect they're going to feel really quite well. Withdrawal is very painful, and it's one of the reasons they continue to keep using drugs, even when it's no longer pleasurable. If you don't help them today, tomorrow, they're going to go through withdrawal, and they have no choice but to use again. And then their desire to quit may not come for weeks, months, if ever. The staff and physicians at Brightside understand that if a patient wants to stop using drugs, we have to see them as soon as possible. That's why, if a patient wants to quit, we will see them within 24 hours, and oftentimes the same day.
A unique aspect of CARE is that the officers will be out in the field with informational pamphlets regarding the program. When they respond to a call for service, then they will present the informational pamphlet to that individual. They will answer any questions that individual may have and refer them to call that number to get involved in that CARE program. It is our goal, our vision, to make sure that these people get the help they need. With our assistance, they can be directed to that right pathway to treatment and hopefully recovery.
That's the completion of our presentation. We're available for questions.
Well, thanks, Chief and Deputy Chiefs, for an outstanding report. I think a lot of great information, lots of great success stories in your report and in this video. And what really stands out to me is that as a result of the leadership of you, Chief, and the command staff, the fact that we've got one of the lowest crime rates in the country, despite having to work with the lowest number of per capita officers in the area, and in the past year having to work out of a temporary facility. So I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to me what you guys and men and women have done over the course of the past year and for a number of years now. And so we can't thank you enough and commend you enough for all the great work that your your men and women do. And so congratulations. And Chief, especially with you, this is your last report. And so we, again, just want to thank you for your dedicated service to the village of Arlington Heights. We'll have many, many opportunities, I think, going forward to say that. But in this forum, I just wanted to thank you again for your great leadership of our men and women. So we can't thank you enough.
Well, I appreciate that. I've had a great team of people to work with, a board that knows the difference between setting policy and staying out of operational issues. That is refreshing, and it goes a long way. A strong relationship with the village administration and my fellow department heads. It's really a strong team altogether.
Thanks, Chief. All right, questions? Trustee Canty.
So I am really excited about the CARE program and everything we're doing to battle the opioid crisis. I think it's tremendous, and all of your work with mental health, that is fantastic to hear about. So I want to thank you for that. Kind of along those lines, do we have a similar program related to gun safety? So I know a number of surrounding police departments participate in the Project Child Safe, where you can get gun locks to give out to gun owners and things like that. Have we thought about participating in programs like that or developing something on our own?
We've discussed it, but we don't have it going at this particular point. I see value in that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor, and I would echo the mayor's words about our thanks to you and the entire police department and the job you do. I do just have a couple of questions. One of the things that was covered in the report that we were given was the use of drones and your collaboration with the fire department and public works.
Right.
And there can be some concerns about what those drones are going to be used for. So I wondered if you might just expand a little bit on what the intent of the drones is to be used for, and how that might look moving forward.
Well, first of all, and foremost, we're aware of privacy issues and use of drones. Flying these over people's personal property for making observations that you wouldn't normally be able to make off the property. You simply can't do it. You simply can't. However, we envision using the drones for example, missing persons. Let's say, get a suspect that flees from a crime on foot. We could use the drone to search for the individual. It's a great planning tool. I think engineering will get a lot of use out of it. Fire has already talked about using it to help film fire scenes. So I think we're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. The interesting part is it's like we had to create our own air wing. We had to have people trained and get their licenses, but we're ready to go. We've got the training in place, and we just put together a bid proposal, and we're waiting for a response on that. So we hope to have that program up and running by late summer.
Well, thank you, Chief. That sort of falls in line with where I thought you were going to go with it, but I appreciate their clarification on that.
Very good.
My second question has to do with a statement that I didn't quite understand. It's on the very last page under new initiatives. And it's the fourth bullet down. It says apply crime prevention through environmental design principles to local park issues. I didn't quite follow what that meant.
There's certain things you can do as in terms of crime prevention after you do an analysis. We have a number of people trained in this. It could be, I'll give you an easy example, moving back a row of bushes that obscure a window or a weakness in a park district facility. Thinning out bushes where people can conceal themselves is another good example. We have a park, we can all refer to it as Bowling Ball Park, at the corner of Arlington and the highway, and we had issues with people, homeless people, setting up tents behind the row of trees in that particular park. And so working with our own folks, we were able to thin out those bushes so we could easily observe who was back there and when they were back there, so we could move them on. Just some examples.
Okay.
If I could add on that just to make a point, we do have a police department representative on our development review team for some of those same reasons. When a development comes through, we have engineering, public works, everyone kind of planning, building, looking at some of the different perspectives, and we always like having someone from police to look at these environmental concerns as well, and it's kind of a continuation of that same concept.
Absolutely.
Okay, again, thank you for the clarification. I just didn't quite understand what that bullet was getting at, so thank you, Mayor.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for all your years of service, and good luck in your retirement. I just want to give a shout out to all the officers and all the work that they do. The public really appreciates, their efforts and the community policing and everything they do, out in the public. And I think the statistics prove that I think people are happier with seeing a police officer as opposed to not necessarily, not if the recipient of a ticket necessarily, but as their conduct as to the stop and things like that. Just curious what the experience has been since we've switched vehicles to all SUVs. Just curious as to how that's worked out, and are we going to be going all SUVs, still keeping some cars, and I don't know.
For patrol purposes, it's all SUVs. They just give us so much more space. We've got so much equipment that we need to take out on the street. Plus, they have the four-wheel capability. If we were working in Phoenix, we would be concerned about that. But we have so many bad weather months, as you all know, that they have really come in handy for us. Really serviceable vehicles, very dependable.
So are we still using marked cars, on a continuing basis, or except for undercover operation or unmarked cars for undercover operations? And
Yes, we are. We have a fleet of unmarked cars. None of them stand out, or they wouldn't be undercover. Our criminal investigators use those cars, and so do some of our tactical anti-game units.
Okay. And we've had good success with the SUVs?
Oh, yes, tremendous success. It's worked out very, very well.
I'm talking about quality and everything.
Quality, visibility out of the vehicles themselves, and you get to actually, you get a better view of the vehicles you pull up next to. You see all kinds of interesting things happening.
You can only imagine. Thank you for everything.
All right.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief and Deputy Chiefs, for all that you and your department do at keeping us safe. We really, really appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. One has to do with the homeless population.
Yes.
And living near the library. I see it on a regular basis. And I know that with the implementation of the crisis intervention training, is that helping? Are you, or well, first of all, I guess, are you seeing any trends, more, fewer, same?
Well, they added some summer pad sites, and that we didn't have before. We have more than our share of pad sites in comparison to other communities. And yes, it does have an effect on the number of our homeless population. However, I should mention that several years ago we had a grant-funded initiative where that we termed the homeless outreach effort, and we sent out a social worker and a police officer to search these people out in the community to see if we can get them off the street. The program was extremely successful. We were able to get people into housing, employment. We helped literally dozens of them. Unfortunately, our grant funding expired. We've tried to reapply for that grant because it was so successful. As a matter of fact, we won a national award for it several years ago through the ICMA organization, and partly because of the results that we came up with. So we're continuing to find funding to reinstate that program.
Oh, that would be great. I do remember actually seeing pairs of people approaching people who I knew to be homeless because they were hanging out where they normally hang out and talking with them. And, I just walked by because, it's not my role by any means, but it was good to see. So hopefully we'll be able to get a grant again for something like that. And I think that also helps to alleviate concerns of residents when they see the same people day after day. Another a statement that was in the report that kind of jumped out at me and I was curious about had to do with as pedestrian stop decreases because officers seem to be discouraged from stopping people.
Well, the circumstances aren't, frankly, they're not that common. And it's part of the racial profiling statistics.
Yeah, in the bias section of the report. So
exactly, and we keep those stats. And by the way, we fall well within reasonable parameters in terms of the people that we stop and talk to or arrest. And but we watch that very closely, very, very closely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. And the last thing I wanted to ask about, and it's not something I'd heard about this year, but that's because summer really hasn't happened yet. I'd had some comments from people concerned about the need for possibly more foot patrols in the downtown on the Friday and Saturday nights. And it may be that there's plenty there that we just don't see because they're not uniformed, but that was just something that had been raised to me in the past.
Well, we realigned our patrol beats when we moved several officers to an earlier shift for the midnight shift. And one of the reasons we wanted to do that was to provide greater coverage in the downtown area in the hours between 9 and midnight. And I think we'll have a greater visible presence once the weather, if it ever stops raining. Yeah. I think it should be apparent.
Okay, that's great. Glad to hear it. Thank you very much. Thanks for all you do.
Trustee Scaletta.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for your years of service. Thanks to the entire police department for their efforts to continue to reduce crime in our town. I had a couple of quick questions for you. So over the years, police officers have been heroes in many different ways, but now they've become heroes in administering life-saving drugs for people who are experiencing an overdose. So when I listened to the numbers that Deputy Chief Hayes was providing us, it was unfortunate that we're saving less than 50% of the lives. I mean, obviously, you can't change the situation that you're dealt. I guess my question is what can the police department or the village do to have, I don't want to say a better success rate, but to try and find a way to get to the point where people aren't overdosing, where we have to administer the life-saving drugs? Or is that just the programs that you've talked about?
I wish I had an easy question. One of the problems that's complicated this matter, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months, is it's no longer just oxycodone. It's no longer just heroin. They're cutting the heroin and they're cutting other drugs with fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 to 100 times more powerful, and that's where a lot of the overdoses are coming from. This is a more recent trend. It's being imported from China to a large degree, transported through Mexico to a certain degree, and the gangs are involved with the distribution. But we're literally seeing fentanyl now in marijuana, cocaine, and other drugs. And it's just so powerful that, frankly, we just can't get there in time. They're gone.
So is it fair to say that many of these overdoses occur because people are unaware of exactly what it is that they're ingesting versus somebody who's just trying to get higher and higher and higher?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. They don't know what the quality is. They don't know what the potency is. And they're gambling. You simply don't know what you're taking. And it's overwhelming, many of them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me personally, I guess I always thought about like an overdose was like you just kept taking it because you wanted to get to the next level. But it's more of an issue of that we have people out there creating these drugs and maybe aren't necessarily taking into consideration the quality of what they're supplying?
Yes.
Okay.
No, you understand.
All right. Now I understand. I really wasn't thinking of it that way, so that helps my perspective. You know, many years ago, many suburbs that even surround us thought that it was best to install red camera lights, red light cameras.
Sure.
And they did that because, you know, under the auspice that they were going to reduce accidents at intersections, and we're only going to use them at certain intersections. And there's still some municipalities that do that. And I remember this board being very clear with you and with the village manager that we didn't want to be part of that. We were one long village, and we didn't want to discourage people, and we wanted to use other traffic calming measures. And it was just one part of your report that I really picked up on and appreciated the data that you provided us without us ever having that money grab system, and that you guys found other ways to accomplish the same goal. So thank you, and thanks to your team for all that you do, and I appreciate the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. I don't have any questions. The report was excellent. Your guys, your whole crew are excellent as always, and I just want to say congratulations and good luck to you as well.
Thank you very much, Trustee.
Trustee Padovani.
And I'd just like to add my congratulations, Chief, for all your years of service to our village and to others, and to thank all the deputy chiefs and all the officers who are serving us here in Arlington Heights. You go out in harm's way every day when you go out there to protect us, and we really appreciate it, and we pray every day that you stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Right. Anything from the audience? Seeing none, Chief and Deputy Chief, thanks again for all your great work and great report.
Have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we've reached the end of the departmental reports, and Randy, just on behalf of the board, I think this round of departmental reports was really outstanding. The quality of the presentations and the preparedness of the presenters was really great, and so we really appreciate it, and please convey that to your staff. So any additional comments from you?
No, we'll be getting more information about the upcoming strategic priorities retreat in the next, couple of weeks here. I would just encourage the board to review the reports and have any additional questions you have in mind or any additional piece of information that you'd like staff to provide. Please let me know, and we'll be talking about a lot of this stuff and as well as all the issues that the board generates coming up in July.
Okay. Any other business besides the request for closed session? Seeing none, Randy?
I would make a request for closed session per 5 ILCS 120/2C3, selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in this act, including a vacancy in a public ordinance, when the public body is given the power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office, when the public body is given the power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to go into closed session pursuant to the statute read by the village manager by Trustee Scaletta, seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. Roll call.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Padovani?
Yes.
Trustee Canty?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. So we are adjourned into closed session and will not be reporting back out. Thank you for joining us this evening.